Finiment, sauf là, je suis à la cave, au fond de coupe par la vente.
Hey, everybody. Thanks. That's us. Rebecca's this person here, and I am.
Kia ora.
So this is. There we go. That's my our slideshow. First one. We're gonna have to go through this a wee bit quicker than we were thinking because of lack of time. So, Outward Sound is the international office for the New Zealand Music Commission, and Rebecca and I do a number of different things. The main thing is we fund an export initiative to help New Zealand music businesses export. We also represent New Zealand and support artists going to different conferences and festivals around the world, like South by Southwest, Womex, Folk Alliance, and Big Sound, and Greyscape. And we do advice and mentoring. And I think, a minute. Sorry, this thing is speeding along in all sorts of ways. Okay. Technology is awesome. Okay, so, so the main thing is we have a funding program. We've just skipped 4 panels along, so I'll just jam this a wee bit, work without a net. So Outward Sound is a funding program where we support New Zealand music businesses to export with the idea of fundamentally to grow their businesses and to bring export dollars back into New Zealand. It is much more of a business development grant than, say, a cultural initiative. So if you have like one show in a festival in Seoul and that's it, don't come to us. But if you have 15 shows throughout Asia and it's a territory that you want to develop, then yeah, come talk to us. So we will support a number of costs. Actually, I'll backtrack because I forgot about a previous slide. There's 3 different types of grants in our program. There's a standard grant, which is up to $50K, which we fund half of the agreed cost. So that would be $50K is $100,000 worth of cost, which not many bands or artists need that or can get that. The other second grant we have is a business grant. It's for like one individual to go and do business meetings or attend a conference. That's up to $5K individual. And then there is delegate grants, and that is specific to the event. So we have one for Big Sound that was up to $1,000. There's one for Womex. I think it was up to $3,500. Rebecca, do you want to talk about the kind of things we fund?
Yeah, so so under our standard grants, there's can be a lot of touring in that, so that can include your flights, accommodation, per diems, production costs, session musicians, rehearsal spaces overseas, Ubers to the show, tour vans, all sorts of things. Did we have a list of them? No, I'm just freestyling. Okay, and then also promotion of your shows if you're touring, or if you're not touring and you're just wanting marketing costs, we can fund PR people, overseas publicists, radio pluggers who are targeting whichever territory you're looking to target. And anything I'm missing?
That's kind of the main bit. Through COVID, we have done a wee bit of live performance showcasing costs. That's something we would normally have not gone into because we, as a rule, do not fund content creation like music recording or video recording, because that's other New Zealand government agencies' purview. But for the sake of COVID and the issues that brought everybody, we did open it up to doing live showcasing or recorded showcasing that was outward facing to the rest of the world. And I think we're still open to that on specific occasions. We have 150K per round. We do 4 rounds a year, and it's each round is we do not make the decisions. Rebecca and I, we have a panel of industry experts who make the decisions, or they advise basically our board who make the final decision. And so Rebecca's and my job is to help people go through the process of applying and talk them through each step and help them put forward the best case that they can put forward about whether or how to apply, or even if they should apply. Do you have anything more to add to that?
I think you covered it.
You covered it all? Yeah, cool. We actually had a carefully considered presentation that was structured in a great way. Oh, look. Okay, yes, so when you apply, these are the things that we need.
But like when you're applying, basically, as Alan just said, we want to make sure that the application you put forward is the best it can be. And so we'll have a look through it before it is considered, and we'll let you know if there's anything that we think can make your application better that we'll get you to send in, or we'll tell you to take stuff out if we think it's not helping.
Yeah. The thing about it is we very much believe that we don't want the program to be about how well you can fill out a form. We want it to be about how well your business is or could be. So we're going to help you get there if we can. So there's a number of different things we add. The main part of the application form is the form itself, which is an online form. And then we have a international marketing plan, which is more kind of an in-depth discussion of what your overall plan is for both the project you're looking for funding for and your long-term plans. Basically, where do you want to be in 3 years? How are you going to get there? And how does this current plan fit into the overall scope of that? Yeah, links to recordings are great. A press kit's great. I guess one of the
your
main...
tour dates, if you're touring,
yeah.
please tell us what dates you're touring. Yep.
If you're having meetings, put your meetings in there.
Yeah. So yeah, but also another thing that helps is that if you're going overseas to tour and stuff, what would help your application to get funding is if you set up meetings or with sort of industry players that you would like to work with overseas around that time. Even if nothing comes of it, for your application's sake, it'll be like, these guys are really serious about getting into this market and it'll really help you get the funding.
So there's a number of elements that your application submission will be judged upon, and these are some of them: the robustness of the project plan, potential to improve business performance, economic benefit to New Zealand, and ability of the performance to implement the project. So if you're aiming too high and there's no way you're going to accomplish it, rethink your plan. Yeah, there's a lot of things. There's and actually one of the main things I didn't list here is how much money we have available and how many people are applying. So, like the last round, we had $500,000 worth of applicants and only 150K to go around. So there are a lot of really valid applications that were denied because other businesses had stronger or more imperative needs.
Also, we don't want people to think that larger artists are always going to get the sort of priority over smaller artists. They're always considered equally, and we definitely encourage people to get in touch if they want to apply, no matter what level you're at, or if as long as you've sort of got plans in mind for overseas.
Yeah. Something else that's worth talking about is we, really stress to our panel that our job is not A&R. We do not judge an applicant on whether we like the music or whether we think it's something that we think is going to work somewhere else. Because, you know, we live in Auckland, New Zealand. We don't know how things are going to be in England or LA or even Australia. All those environments are very different. And having gone to those countries, I can tell, you know, that you just don't know what is going to be the next big thing. So we do rely on international support that an artist or label already has, or any kind of demonstration of international interest. And that could be reviews on blogs, it can be streaming stats, it can be label interest, it could be conversations that you are having with important people that can fulfill roles in your future career. It all depends on the applicant and how much they're looking for, and yeah, what their potential would be.
Yeah, I think we might be done.
I think we might be done. Yeah. Oh, look, there's how to contact us. So you need to contact us first before you apply, because our application form changes per round. We have a different form with a different password. And
we just want to make sure that you apply, because Alan said that we've got different types of grants, and we just want to make sure that you're applying for the correct one as well.
Yeah. Any questions? Yes.
Yeah.
It's kind of like what I mentioned earlier with the robustness of the plan. Is it something that is likely to is it well thought out? Are the support networks in place that are going to help something be fulfilled? Are they asking for a reasonable amount of money? Are they doing something that is intelligent for that artist to do at this point in their career?
So like an example could be like, we want to be super successful in Australia, or like we want to like make the charts in the United States or something like that. So if they want to be super successful in Australia, like in the long term, they're like, okay, we'll start and just do, say they're applying for a tour just like Melbourne, Sydney, and Brisbane, yeah. What's the other big city in Australia? And then they can kind of work. So we'll start doing this, and then kind of describe how that fits into their long-term plan of like maybe playing bigger venues in Australia, selling more records in Australia, overall having more fans in Australia, if that's their plan. Yeah, and yeah, pretty much. And then also why that is your goal in the first place, and why it's a good reason to tour there now. And good reasons can be like, we can see we've got lots of fans there based on our listeners on Spotify, or people buying our records on Bandcamp and stuff like that.
Follow-up question to that as well. So if you do have like a stepping stone plan that you want to get funded for, what's the kind of, is there a grace period or something after that where you can't get funded to do a similar thing again? So you do just go play the big three cities, but then you're like, well, but we could book a massive tour now.
There isn't really any stand down period. Obviously, we don't want people to be like greedy, but like if you say you booked a small tour, you got funding for it, and then immediately after you got offered like a really amazing like support slot with a huge band that's touring Australia, like as long as the next thing that you're applying for funding for is a step up from the previous thing, like it's definitely worth applying again.
Yeah, definitely. Like you don't want to do. There's an element in the program where we don't do business as usual, which is a phrase that is dotted throughout the application or the support documents, and that really means, you know, if you go to Australia once or twice a year and do 4 shows, and that's just part of your business, then don't bother coming to us. But if it's something that you are definitely going to try to step it up each time.
Or you could do like similar like tour dates, but as like the venues have to be getting bigger and bigger and bigger, sort of thing. You don't want to see people applying for the same tours at the same size venues year after year.
I mean, there are bands that go to London and play to New Zealanders every year, which is great for their bottom line, but it doesn't grow them as a New Zealand export artist.
Any more questions? yes, we do fund writing trips as well. So if you've lined up some awesome opportunities to write with some like great people overseas, you can be eligible for funding for that. But just as Alan said before, we don't fund content creation at all. So if you're going over just to record all the songs that are already written, that wouldn't quite come under it. But yeah, if you've got some writing collabs on the horizon, it's definitely something you could apply for.
Well, we do that regularly, actually. We usually have 1 or 2 applications around these days where people are going to LA or London to spend 2 or 3 weeks writing songs with people. It's really helpful when you do that to have a list of who those artists are.
Yeah. And also in that case, it's mostly just travel and accommodation. We don't typically fund studio space and that, but I'm sure if it's worth it.
A case could be made, yeah.
Yeah. Rodney?
I was going to just talk on the same point really, but just thinking about opportunities that arise that don't involve physically going to the overseas place, the different scenarios where you might fund that as part of someone's growth intention.
Oh, yeah. So you don't have to travel on Outward Sound funding. I think, as I said before, if you say a publicist has heard your music and it's like, or has managed to get a hold of your demos and like, I'm going to get all of the United States all over this. And like, basically you have to pay them. You could but you don't have time to tour. You don't want to tour yet. You're not ready to tour there yet. You can apply to help pay them just with like one grant. Sorry, I worded that weird, but you get what I mean.
We're out of time? Yes, that's true, Dylan. We are out of time.
Okay, thank you.
If you have any questions, just give us a yell.
Yeah.
Suppose we got room.
Should I be here? Cool.
I don't think that's...
It's not me.
Adam, I'm Dev.
Here we go.
Millie.
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. I'm Maria Amato. Can you hear me? Is this working? It is. Okay, welcome everyone to our next session, Going Global Australia. I'm Maria Amato. I'm the CEO of the Australian Independent Record Labels Association. And joining me here today is our esteemed panel, and I'm going to get them all to introduce themselves. Over to you, Poppy.
My name's Poppy Reid. I am Editor-in-Chief at The Brag Media, which has a bunch of titles, music and entertainment underneath it. Probably the most well-known ones are Rolling Stone, Australia and New Zealand, Variety Australia. Then we have sites like Tone Deaf, The Brag, The Music Network, and a couple of others as well. Yeah.
Hi everyone, I'm Ashley Gay. I have a digital distribution company called Zellon Entertainment, which incorporates Zellon Digital for labels and Noise Hive for artists. We handle quite a few New Zealand labels and artists, but obviously the focus is on global exploitation.
I'm David Hume. I'm artist and label development for The Orchard, Australia and New Zealand. Similar to Ash, we are digital distributor. We work with also a bunch of other great New Zealand artists and labels, but again, the focus today is how can we take the good music that's made here to Australia.
And I'm Jason Moore. Kia ora. Thank you so much for having us all here in your wonderful city and country. I host a show called Local and/or General on Triple R Radio in Melbourne, which focuses on emerging Australian and New Zealand artists. Have played lots of stuff from Church and AP, Marlon Williams, Vanessa Worm, Nah Noise. I also have a background in booking venues. Did books like Leisure, Robinson, Broods, Imizuma. Booked Lord's first show in Australia. And I can't wait to learn lots from everybody here.
And unfortunately, Sam Wicks can't be here today. His flight got cancelled, so unfortunately he won't be joining us. But now I'll get straight into it. And we're going to give you a little bit of an overview of the Australian market and how you can get yourself seen and heard in Australia. Would you recommend touring to raise your profile, Poppy?
Absolutely, yeah.
And how would you suggest digitally first, or what's your advice to anyone considering doing so?
So I'm going to take this from the perspective of media, because you don't want me talking about something that I don't work in or know about, so I'll just try and put that hat on only. But as media, I definitely believe a little bit of a run-up before you tour digitally, growing that space, growing your community in a way that is authentic to you, and using a publicist if you're pitching to media is super important. I know that for a lot of artists it's quite a privilege to be able to afford a publicist. They're not cheap, especially the really, really good ones. But that is definitely who myself and our news editor and a lot of our writers rely on to find out what's happening, who's touring, who's releasing an album, who we should be concentrating on. They know the Australian media landscape. They know how to pitch. They know what works, what kind of formats we have, and so they pitch accordingly, and it just looks better if you've got a publicist as well. If you can't afford a publicist, a bit sneaky, but just set up a different email and pretend you're a publicist. Like, why not?
I also believe GyroStream has a service where they can do press releases for you for a fee, so perhaps look up GyroStream.
Yes, there's a few companies like that have different services. Sorry.
No, you're right.
Nope, I'm done.
All I was going to say is there's a growing base of PR people in Australia. It's really blown out. So the two factors involved are the cost, and the cost is an upfront. They get paid up front with no real guarantees. But what you want to do is check the websites, check what they've worked on. I always say to people, first question you want to ask, what's the last 4 projects you've worked on? And then work back from that. And if those genres or those sort of things fit with what you're putting out, then that's probably a good one for you. The positive is, you pay up front, but they are all quite honest because they're all busy. So you'll send your tracks to them, they'll review them. If they come back and say, yeah, this would be good for us, you can pretty much guarantee that they will go, the extra mile. Because they knock back more than what they take on.
What's the lead time? I mean, having worked in this industry, sometimes we get things the day of release and go, can you do something with my song? Well, it's way too late. Jazz, what about yourself? What's the kind of lead time that you'd suggest to an artist before they approach radio or get a publicist or put all the ducks in a row?
Well, yeah, the longer or the further out you can work definitely helps. Sometimes, I guess some songs that I've got. I remember Aldous Harding just put a CD in my pigeonhole and was just like, I think you'll like this. And I loved it. And there was no lead time. She just moved to Melbourne. And
Okay, publicists everywhere are hating you right now.
But she got a publicist after that, and an awesome label as well. So
Can I add to that though? So if I get a press release and it says I'm touring at the end of the year, here's my tour dates, blah blah blah, that's my opportunity to publish that. And as media, we have KPIs, so we want to be first. We want it to be exclusive, and so that's when I'll publish the story. But if that artist struggles to sell tickets for that tour and they come to me after and they say, "Here, just pushing the same tour. Here's the press release again," I'm not going to cover it because I've already done it once, and I can also kind of tell that it's because you're struggling with ticket sales. So I might push you to book a campaign with us and pay for a bit of like an integration partnership. But yeah, I think you kind of get one shot when it goes to media.
Yeah. Also, how does the group feel about what you write in your approach in that email to media? Because sometimes it's an essay, it's all about I, and the person writing it hasn't done any research on, if they're approaching the brag, what are the publications that they've done, what are some of the great articles that Poppy's done. Tell them it's like everything is a win-win in negotiation. It's not just about you. They don't know you from a bar of soap. Ash, what about in your experience with people approaching you from a label, from a distribution perspective, the same?
I'm sitting here thinking of an example I told on a panel here a few years back, but look outside the box, like most press releases and stuff don't get read. And I just keep thinking back, one of them got sent to me in a tube and it was an AO poster. You roll it out and it was the whole bio and everything in this poster, and that straight away turns up at the office. Instead of like these piles of letters, you got this tube and it's like, what the hell's in that tube? You open it up and beforehand, before long you're contacting the artist going, that was really cool.
But can we also have that digitally? Because I'm not going to be transcribing everything that's on that.
I'd actually say do something physical. Because that is a big point of difference, because everyone just hits a button on an email and spews it out to as many people as they can. Try and, as I said, think outside the box. It might not be an AO poster, or it might not even be a letter, but just something different.
With a QR code that takes me to the assets.
Speaking of assets, Dave, I want to tell the audience a little bit about the Orchard's kind of data that perhaps can be included. Because if you want someone to read your email and invest in you, you need to tell them that you've had some success in certain territories and so forth.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is research of the person you're reaching out to and the company. And similar to what you said, look at the campaigns. If it's a press person, if it's a booking agent, look at the artists they work with. Are there similar artists? A recent example of a band we work with, the Lazy Eyes, they did some shows in Australia with Daffodils, and that was reciprocated. They came here, I think, a couple of weeks ago and supported them. And that worked perfectly. It helps both artists grow in different markets. But it's, because Big Sound's next week, which is the Australian version of going global, and I've got 3 emails now which are copy-paste jobs that have different people's names. Sullivan being one. I think David's a bit different from Sullivan. And straight away off the bat, I'm like...
Delete.
Pretty much. It's, when you're time poor, you need the facts to kind of come through. And as much as a lovely bio and all the flourishes, just being honest and being true is often the best way, just to cut through and go, this is who I am, here's my record, this is the most important thing about me, the work that we've done or the band kind of thing. That makes it easier for someone, receiving it to dive into. And then if a conversation happens, often the data and the stats and the bigger picture can come after that. But that initial kind of, interest grab that you've got to make, keep it short and succinct. And then everything else can follow on after that.
yeah, there's nothing worse than a desperado sales pitch. When you see a desperado sales pitch, it's like, how do I be polite here?
Well, I think you just need that curated approach, right? You just and that shows they're not desperate. That shows that they've made this effort and they're pitching something to, Tone Deaf covers all different types of music. We kind of cover everything, but you wouldn't pitch to a website that covers hip hop with your pop act, just do your research, have a look at what they do, maybe look at the formats that they cover as well. So Tone Deaf, we have something called well, it's across all the sites actually. We've got Record of the Week and Video of the Week. On Tone Deaf, we do a thing called Listen to My Record. A Get to Know thing is another thing that we do. So maybe you would look at those and go, okay, I'm pitching for this or just this. And then I can kind of look at how that fits in our capacity and come back to you based on what you want. The worst pitches I've ever had is when someone will email and say, let me know what you think, because it doesn't actually matter what I think. It matters what our readers think.
You could also apply the buddy system. We have a thing in Australia called Triple J Unearthed. You go into Triple J Unearthed and you can basically contact the artist, so you can filter by genre, etc., work out who sort of fits your mould, contact that artist, find out what they're doing in the Australian landscape, whether it be directly in contact with them or via their social media presence, and then work back from that. And you'll probably find most of the time, A, that they'll definitely get back to you, but B, they're probably equally as interested in New Zealand as you are in Australia.
And perhaps that could be like supporting opening acts for each other.
Which is the best, or just in the live music realm, the best way to grow your fan base. I think even across media and everything, the best way to grow your fan base is by playing with other acts that already have a fan base. And it kind of taps into, if anyone caught the Shay Pope talk this morning, like you can have all your followers on all these different platforms, but the most important thing that you can have is a community. And playing with other acts and supporting each other, that definitely helps build your own community and your own fan base.
Terrific. So far, 10 minutes in, we've got write a good bio, have a lovely story about yourself, but be short, succinct, to the point. Find a good publicist, know the landscape, know what sort of shows are happening and that are part of your genre, like big sound, and get your help publicist to perhaps put a campaign together, like a bit of a timeline plan. Use some data from the Orchard, connect with industry at other conferences such as this, and then try and get on radio. What do you think about that, Poppy?
Trying to get on radio?
Yeah, for an interview.
Media, I don't know.
Media.
I mean, it's a great stat to include in your media release. You know, if you say, look, we're played on Triple J, or we've got this playlisting, or in New Zealand we're played on these kinds of things, I'll look at those successes because they're also great things to include in an article. If we're doing a tour announcement, if we're doing a news piece about your song, your album, whatever, it's good to have extra info to put in and show our readers, hey, you should be listening to this artist because they were played on this radio station, or they're high rotation over here, or they won this award, or this many streams, or whatever. Or just good for the stats, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But you're more radio.
Yes. What would you like to add to that?
Can I just say first, I love publicists and they're all amazing. But I never read any press releases. And I basically just queue up all of the links and then flick through them. And when I like something, I'm like, okay, we're going to play that one. And yeah.
Who was it that put at the end of their press release, if you've read all this way, please ring this phone number and we'll come and play at your house?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Do you remember who the artist was?
No, I can't remember.
Oh, it's novel.
Quite a few years ago now.
So for New Zealand artists wanting to make a foray in Australia and start touring, which city do you think that they should start hitting up on, or does it not matter so much?
I think it depends on a couple of things like genre, because different cities in Australia gravitate towards certain music styles and have certain communities, and that's where data can come into it, and looking at the numbers. If you've released music on the streaming services, you should be able to access where those people are listening. And, you know, you don't want to go, I need to go to Sydney because I've got my heart set on it, but Melbourne and Brisbane or Adelaide might be, you've got more fans and people there that you can connect with, and then reaching out directly through, you know, social media and things to actually solidify that connection and relationship and see if people actually want you there. It's always a tough thing when you're putting on a hard-ticketed show, which is often why the support route is more beneficial, because the pressure's off selling tickets. But again, it goes back to doing your research on that certain marketplace, and where are the artists that you like in Australia, where are they based, where are they touring, look at that, who are they working with, who's their publicist, who's their, you know, label, publisher, all those kind of things, to build a picture of what might work for an artist coming over.
Fantastic.
Oh, can I maybe add to that one as well? Go where your friends are. Like you'll already have like a bit of a community somewhere. And
Save on accommodation.
Yeah, it's kind of easier to, I don't know, build your community if it's already a bit started. And I think the intro to this panel is Australia, the West Island. We've all got cousins there. Like, you probably have a bunch of family and friends somewhere in Australia already.
And make a start there.
They can turn up to your show and you can be like, look at all my fans.
Wow, this act is popping.
Film this.
Poppy, what are the key Australian websites and publications that New Zealand artists should pay attention to?
Just go to the Bragg Media. They're all there, all the besties. The Bragg does have some goodies. So obviously I went through them earlier, so I won't bore you with them again. But then there's other music websites which are really great. So the music.com.au is a really good one. They cover everything as well, even music industry stuff too. So if you win an award or you have a music industry element to your story, you can pitch that too. They'll cover it, I think. Music Feeds is another really great blog. And Junkie, they just announced a new music publication called Check Check, which is really cool. I think it's really focused towards Gen Zers, which is nice, but I think that they're genre agnostic and that they cover everything too. Those are all websites.
What about the blogs over our way, like Purple Sneakers and things like that?
Purple Sneakers is great, yeah, owned by the same guys that do the music.com.au, yeah. And they do quite a lot of electronic stuff?
More dance electronic.
Yeah, awesome. That's a good genre one. And then AU Dollars is hip-hop.
Acclaim, Trouble Juice, maybe?
Yeah, there's a bunch. But just go to the bragg.media, honestly. All our sites are on there.
Does anyone have any questions at this point in time for the panel about bios and timelines and finding out where you should start when you're planning touring in Australia?
Any examples of roadblocks anyone's hit with trying to deal with Australia?
I just have a question about should you definitely have some music already released and in the market, or on Spotify, and you're pushing it out there, or should you be like, I'm trying to time up my whole release so it all hits at the same time, and then I land in Sydney and I'm playing my release show. How far in advance do you think people should give themselves to actually try and build something?
From where I sit, we always use the word consistency. So you want to see an artist or a band or whatever with consistent releases. Like I always try and say that you need to be the commander of your home territory first. Build your story here so that you've got basically an easy sell, if you know what I mean. But you want to see not just a new artist with one release, you want to see a new artist with, multiple releases. And that doesn't mean that you have to have fully recorded releases. You might choose to do a live EP or something, or it could be, or even a collaboration with, an Australian artist, like what I was saying before about Triple J and Earth. Reach out to them and you'll be surprised how many people would want to collaborate these days.
Because I'm media, I don't think I should answer this question, but I did ask my artist manager friend who had an artist on Coachella, so he does all right. And I asked him, do you think that an artist should have an album out before they tour, or you can just kind of have a couple singles and then tour and then the album later? And he said definitely an album out and full, digital strategy of like pushing that before you tour. He said, I have made that mistake in the past by not releasing the record and touring, and it's come back to bite me.
Ash, what in today's world, a lot of people are just releasing singles as opposed to albums, more so. Is that statement that Poppy said still holds true? I mean, would you be interested? Would you think that if you've got a couple of digital singles and they've been well received, that would be enough as long as you plan the overall tour? Because I think we've seen a trend moving away from people actually releasing albums per se, but they're just continuing on with the singles and EPs.
I'm a big fan of albums still, mainly from the terminology that David and I know is waterfalling. So you don't want to discover an artist and find there's only one release there, because a lot of the times they'll listen to that track and then they're gone. They won't be a fan, do you know what I mean? Hence why the diversity of content, in the sense if you've got an opportunity to do a live recording, put it as an EP, just be consistent in whatever you're doing, whether that be one release every 6 months, one release a month, depending on how prolific you are as an artist, and just release that way.
Can I, maybe just on that one, I remember I heard this awesome song on, and I think this is all case by case a little bit, depending what's really working for you as an artist. I remember I was listening to Six Music, which is a UK BBC station, and I heard this awesome song from Lord, and I was like, holy crap, that's really good. And then hit up the crew, and then someone in our office was like, oh, there's only 200 likes on Facebook. That's going to be a disaster. And I was like, I think this is a really good song. Let's do a show. And there was only that one song out at that time. So I don't know. I feel like wherever you have momentum, just like work to your strengths. And when we booked the show with Lord, it was 200 capacity. By the time the show came around, she probably could have sold 1,000 tickets. And then a couple weeks later, it was Splendour in the Grass. And my boss was booking Splendour in the Grass at the time. And Frank Ocean pulled out. And Lord filled in for Frank Ocean, which was kind of a crazy trajectory, which doesn't happen to everybody. But, I think it's that, like, work to your strengths. When the snowball's rolling in the right direction, keep pushing it, maybe.
Good advice. And and if you are going to release an album, obviously, if you do a tour and maybe get some hard vinyl and so forth that your fans can take away, get some merch, all of that kind of thing where they've actually have an opportunity to buy something physical, as you were saying, as well.
And that offsets a lot of the costs that go into touring as well. If you can have some good merch, whether it be vinyl, bucket hat, whatever is the trendy item, that can sometimes turn, what you're looking at, a couple of grand loss, into break even, which means that you might be able to do it again, sell some more merch, sell some more tickets, and that kind of growth that you want to see. Before, to your question, just flying to Sydney, dropping a song, go to Sydney beforehand, meet some people. If you can, do your research on ground, set up some things so that when you do take that plunge, you've got contacts and you've got people already in that city that you can lean on for when you do, drop the song, surprise show kind of thing. That makes a lot of sense to do that. And a lot of people often don't think that it's important. They're like, I'll just go there and do it and we'll be fine. You've got to be prepped. You've got to go there. You've got to see what's happening, because even though we're so close, there's different market forces at play. There's different trends and genres and things. And the more prepared you are, the better that's going to be.
And even if you get bucket hats done, it gives you something else to talk about on your social media, and it does show that consistency and keeps the momentum going on what you're doing.
Ash, in your capacity as the owner of Zellon, have you had a lot of New Zealand artists approach you for distro?
We've got a number of companies here in New Zealand, a lot of labels, a number of artists, Tammy Nielsen, Razor Bizza, Hooks, LA. They're probably sort of some standout ones over the last 12 months. And have they approached you, or have you found them? A couple of artist managers have come direct to us. Given that we've got Noise Hive for the artists, it's like if you're familiar with TuneCore or CD Baby, it's that sort of market, but it's very much a lot more curated. So we're looking for touring artists. We're looking for artists that we can then connect with other artists to collaborate, etc. as well. So there's a lot more hands-on, if you know what I mean, rather than just signing up to a website and flicking it out. Mm-hmm.
So yes, Noise Hive. If you haven't heard of it, look at the website and see how that can help for artists. And the Orchard also, with the data and looking up, similar genres where they're trending, where they're successful, and also by reading Australian media content, subscribing to some of these newsletters that go out regularly, you can get a feel for what's happening in Australia, what shows are happening, what artists are trending there, and Splendour in the Grass, Big Sound, all these events, and give yourself lead time, perhaps a good 3-month plan. But you'll probably find that some of these artists have an artist manager, they have a label, and a booking agent or a team around them to help them get known in Australia. Has anyone in the room actually been to Australia to perform? Great. Tell us about your experience, if you don't mind. Oh.
That was a long time ago. It might not be the same. That was probably like, how long ago was that? That was 17 years ago.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, we had Triple J, Airplay, Airplay, and we had a publicist. And I think that stuff, the Triple J Airplay and MTV Airplay was probably the reason why we went.
Uh-huh. And how many cities did you go to?
We just kept doing the coastal kind of run.
East Coast. Fantastic. And planning on, and you didn't go back and do it again?
Actually, was going to be one of my questions whether it's kind of feels like it's valid if there was an audience there that long ago, whether it would be something to kind of think back, since we're doing releases of our 21 years of our album kind of thing that got released in Australia as well. Should we be thinking about, if we're going to do it in New Zealand, what do we do in Australia, and just see?
There's definitely a 90s renaissance. I don't know what the time frame is.
Yeah.
Who's the band?
Renaissance for everything. Remember Sister to Sister? They're an Aussie sister duo. They're releasing a song.
A lot of tours were with other bands like Spider Bait.
Just what we're saying. Yeah. So it's fantastic. Well, you should come back. 21 years, you have to celebrate that.
A group called Sound December, and it's got it's 20,000 deep now with people that loved the 90s in Australia. So go have a look there. I reckon that's an opportunity.
And this is Millie Milgett from Sounds Australia right there. It's someone you should know as well. So thank you. Jazz, were you going to say something? You look
I
pensive.
did have a little brain bubble just before. I know we're saying like Australia and New Zealand. So I always kind of have a similar approach to. I almost would say it's like Melbourne, Sydney, Auckland, Brisbane, Perth. It's kind of the same approach that you take with breaking into each city. And because we're best friends, lots of people in Australia do love coming to New Zealand. And if you dangle that carrot of like, oh, hey, why don't we come and support you in Melbourne or Sydney or Brisbane, and then you can come and play with us in Auckland, people will love that.
Yeah. And also, let's not forget Adelaide for the first 3 months of the year. They've got for festivals and music, WOMAD, and a bunch of things happening as well. But that's March, Mad March.
Just as a point on that, how far out are they booking these festivals and, like your port fairies and things like that?
I'd say 6 months prior.
You'd think
they
so,
start
right?
planning that. And if you're within 3 months, your chances of getting on are pretty low.
So something to do on a rainy winter's afternoon here in Auckland.
Planning for your summer.
Blues Fest just announced its first artist lineup, and that takes place across Easter in Byron, so April.
So it's even 9 months prior.
But that's Blues Fest. Yeah. I guess they're massive, yeah.
But yeah, I think Laneway is due to announce in the next week or two. And
They're Feb?
yeah, I think that's January, Feb, and I'm hoping that the Auckland version's coming back as well. Yeah, it's 6 months for festivals, which is often tough as a new artist planning. You go going release to release, but one thing that from our side when we're dealing with releases is as much of a timeline and a plan as well. That even if it's made up, the amount of times Hannah, that we send Spotify and DSPs slightly fudged timelines because it's important, and the releases will happen, obviously not on the dates that we might initially say, but just knowing that and being able to tell that story from a press point of view as well, going like, hey, we're going to release a record, there's going to be 4 singles, here's the rough dates, we're looking at tour dates here. Even if you don't have things confirmed, being able to speak about what's coming up 6-12 months helps a lot, especially when you're trying to enter the market. A lot of people will see that and go, they actually care and they want to make this work because they're planning ahead, not going release to release. Oh, shit, I'll go to Sydney and hope that people turn up to a show. That does help.
And in terms of telling a story, maybe just novel, if you're coming into the market and you've got a show booked and you know who you'll get your publicist, or if you know who the audience is, maybe just send them a little story about you, or say, looking forward to seeing you at the show Saturday night, just something personal like that, so they remember you as being different or really excited to be there. What do you all think about that?
Yeah, it's something sneaky that you can do anytime, even at a conference. I have this friend who told me that his tip for networking, because we're both introverts, a little bit anxious, and he's like, I've got this tip. So what you do is when you know you're going to see someone at this gig or at a conference or whatever, you just look up their socials, maybe look up their Spotify if they're an artist. He did it the other night. We went to see this artist, Chris Lands, and he said, your latest single, name the single. And he's like, it's really good. good. And then that made Chris, the artist, go, oh, not only do you care, but you listen to my music, you remember the name of the song, because I didn't remember, I forgot it just then. And so that could be a good tip for when you're pitching out or emailing as well. Like, to me, you might go, Poppy, you did such a great job at going global. Oh, my God, you're amazing up there. I'm reading that email. I'm sorry.
Ash, do you want to just share with the audience a little bit about labels in Australia and how, people should connect to them or, jump on what they're doing in terms of promoting and touring their artists?
Yeah, and David might be able to help me here a little bit, but the general feel these days, I always use the example of, say, up until about 8 years ago, from a distribution perspective, we were probably pushing out 80% releases that were Australia, New Zealand only. From the rights perspective, that's completely flipped upside down now. So the majority of labels are looking for content to sign for the world. So it does put a bit of a hamper on, I would love to say hit up the labels that fit your tracks and your genre and then sign it to them for Australia, but it's very sort of far in between these days. But there's nothing to really stop you at least proposing. There's nothing wrong with sending out to the labels and, whatever interest you get, look at excluding New Zealand, give them the rest of the world if it's a label that you're passionate about, and you'll find that a lot of the time they will take out their home territory. Would you agree?
We've done a deal in the last month where that's the case, where the artist is a New Zealand artist and she wanted to find someone locally that could work the record, and so it's with a really good US label, rest of world, and we're working at Australia, New Zealand, and we would have loved to have taken it for the world, but that's what the artist wanted, and it's working out really, really well. So that's one thing to look at, because it's one thing having a nice US label that's pushing your music, but they're not in the market, they don't understand everything, and having those home ground people can be really, really beneficial, and holding on to those rights. And I think currently the independent landscape has never been healthier. There's so many great labels, distributors that have a real local focus, and it again, I keep saying do your research, like I'm some nagging teacher. Do your research on those labels and the music you make, because they're going to be the ones that have that community around them and things like that, and you want to find the best home for your music. And a lot of people forget that the artist should have the power in all of these conversations. You choose who should work with your music, not the other way around, and that's often lost. And with a better independent landscape, the artist has a lot more, say and control over that, and that's only a good thing moving forward.
Jazz, do you want to add anything further to that about, reaching out to radio?
Yeah, I guess, maybe just like on the snowballing thing, it's good to keep your story evolving, and maybe if someone doesn't pick up on it the first go, maybe second go you tweak your message and you're like, we also had these really cool people support us, and we're playing these cool shows with these cool bands, and you're pretty cool, so it's probably a cool fit.
Don't be a desperado.
Yeah.
Play it cool.
Are there any other questions in the audience at this point in time before we... Yes? Would you like a microphone or...
Oh, no, it's okay. Do you guys have any advice around artists potentially approaching labels with their music, or is it sort of like the label finds you type scenario? Because it's sort of hard to know when is a good time to try and reach out to get more help with your project, or do you still need to graft and keep working on your craft and getting better, and then someone organically might find you? Do you have any thoughts around that?
Bit of both. I think you've got to put yourself out there, and it's always tough to give your art out to someone, unsolicited, going, I hope they like it. And the reverse will kind of happen if you put in the effort and you're promoting and working on your music and your art and getting yourself out there. Naturally, people will gravitate towards that. And at the same time you're reaching out, you'll usually find the right person through a kind of combination of that process.
And obviously, if someone comes to you, it's going to be more on your terms than the other way around. So just be wary of that. So I've had a number of examples over the years where artists we've distributed under Noise Hive have been signed or picked up by majors, let's say, and they want to come back and grab all their back catalogue. So number one thing I say to them is, no, you've paid for that. let them come to the party and pay for your new recordings, and you retain ownership on your back catalogue, which every single time has worked in their favour because the back catalogue's blown up as much as they've grown as well. Just be wary of things like that. So, like terms, number of singles commitment, things like that. If it's something that you want to test out and you're the one that's, say, cold called, but you've got the interest back, test it out with maybe 1 or 2 singles to start with and try and get some real commitment from them as it grows.
Yeah, I reckon one good way to do all of that is when you email people, just keeping you in the loop. And then it's not like you're not like begging for anything, but you're just like keeping people across what you're doing.
From my perspective, I would think that if I got an email going, number one, find out what genres the label invests in. And if you send me an email and say, I love what you did with this artist, congratulations on whatever success, and then I've a similar genre, you can listen to it here, give them the link, make it super easy for them, don't make it hard, make it short, sharp and succinct, maybe a 250-word bio and that's it, because they don't have time to read an essay. But they're probably more likely to continue reading your email if you're showing them that you understand what kind of artists they have on their roster and that you're giving them some feedback on success. What do you think, Ash?
100%, all of the above.
Does that answer? Does that give you more confidence? You should definitely go and, climb every mountain and make your opportunities happen. Yes?
What would you say, let's say you get a deal, what would you say a good deal kind of looks like communication-wise with the label?
Get a lawyer. And people might laugh, but it's money well spent at the beginning because those terms can crucify you later if they're not to your favour. And also, it helps you negotiate. A good lawyer will negotiate good terms for you. Yeah.
But past that point, let's say the artist has got a label. What does a good deal look like?
Can I answer that in one brief sentence? I love this line, only bet where you can win. So if you're winning, that's a good deal.
Yeah, but for how long? Because if it's too much in that favour, then the label's going to lose interest, and before you know it, you're shelved.
Well, hopefully you get a win-win.
That's the ideal, yeah. But you need to understand what you're signing, because that's what I said about the lawyer, and what your dreams are, what your aims and ambitions are, because you don't want to find that you've given away your publishing now, and the single blows up, and as Ash said, then they want your back catalogue, and they may not be offering you the value that catalogue could bring. So, a win-win is a good contract, but the ones that are giving you an advance will want more out of you than if you've already done the work in getting your release out, because then you're going to the table almost as a 50-50 kind of split.
Yeah, and the lawyer factor that Maria pointed to, there's New Zealand lawyers that are versed in Australian law as well, so you don't have to assume that you have to go and find an Australian lawyer.
Communication, I'm just do you reckon the communication is constant? Would you say it's normal?
Communication between a label and yourself? Yeah. It depends on... Well, they should obviously be communicating with you, but they should, ask them at the outset, what is it you can do for me? This is, what's the plan? They'll discuss a plan with you. If someone just signs you and puts the contract in their drawer, well then,
Condense your emails.
Yeah.
Don't send one question, one email, because you'll just piss everyone off. And you'll become one of those artists that's just a pain in the ass. And the morale of the staff at that label will be like, oh, here he goes again, just put your questions or queries. There's no stupid question, but at the same time, no one wants to be badgered. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. The worst ones are those ones that send you SMSs at midnight, and crudely speaking, you're sitting on the toilet or something. You know what I mean? It's, oh, God, and this bloke again, Just be tactful about what you do.
But ask for a timeline, and stick to that timeline. So it's just like a project management thing, as if you're installing a kitchen or something. This is going to happen in this month, that month. Yeah. And so you know what your expectations are of the label, and you know how to play ball on their terms too. Anyone else have a question? Thank you.
So it seems like in Australia the gun industry reaches way further down. Obviously it's huge, but so in New Zealand, at the level that my band is at, whenever we play with other bands and we're communicating with people that we want to do something with, we talk with the person that's going to do it directly. And it seems like in Australia, so looking to tour over there and looking at the kind of bands that we would be on a level with, that we want to play with, everyone's got a touring agent, a booking agent, sometimes a label. What's the best way to approach people that you want to work with? Do you have to go to, is it better to go to management and talk to them, or can we just talk to bands that know?
There's no harm in sending them a social media message saying, hey, we'd love to work with you. We're going to reach out to your manager as a courtesy, because the manager should be the one that, books the deal. But then if the manager is talking to the artist, the artist already knows you because you've sent them a nice social message to congratulate them on a show or something. What do you think?
Yeah, 100%. It's that, because if you're speaking to the band when that tour is being booked, their agent's going to go, who should we get to support? Speak to the manager. If you've hit the manager, drop them a polite email, even the agent, and all three of them go, you, then that's a no-brainer, and then that'll happen. That's the best way to do it, is to kind of, again, just be polite and congratulatory and, be like, yeah, I heard you're going to be doing a tour. It would be dope if we can link up. Here's a link to our stuff. Not even that, the first message, just that. And then if the band's like, oh, yeah, cool, I'll check your music out. And you build that organic relationship. There's sometimes where agents and managers will have an agenda and the band will push against that. I've been in this position where, as a manager, I've really wanted this band to go on tour because it's going to help some other business interests I might be involved in. But the band usually wins those things. They're like, well, fuck you tour. We're not going to go on if we're playing with these shit people that you put. We want people, we want friends, we want artists we like on tour with us. And the best way to do that is to strike up that friendship with those artists.
And then depending on the level of the bands, that could be a media story as well. Say you get a big Australian band that you connected with via Instagram DM, that's a headline for us, that's fun. And then there's so many headlines that have come out of social media DMs as well, where an artist has reached out to another artist, love your work, would love to collab. And then next minute they're just... I
think Tina Arena was an example of that with Matt Corby, wasn't it? Isn't that how that happened?
How cool is that? There you go.
But always ask the manager as well. Don't just go off and do your little deals, because you'll be remembered by the manager and it's kind of discourteous, Anyone else? Because we're getting towards the end, so these questions have been great. Yes?
So as an artist myself, I'm in a really exciting place where I have a debut album and it's like my best work to date, I know.
Congratulations.
Thanks. Little following and haven't performed much, but I have the confidence as a person and on stage. As far as like PR or pushing a single or just putting the album out, what's like a general, obviously it's different for everybody, but as far as maybe the first move or just some advice or suggestions.
What sort of music is it?
This album's like EDM electronica production with me singing and rapping.
I mean, from my background, remixes have always been a major thing. Again, comes back to that collaboration thing, reach out. You don't necessarily have to go for the best and biggest name in remixing, but to get someone else's perspective on your track, and then, again, you've got another reason to release another single or something from the remix. They're often great ways to get to the next level with dance stuff, because you're then utilising the network of that person who's remixed your track.
So just finding somebody within that genre that
Yeah. And again, then you're building that rapport with that person. And it could be that, generally it used to be back in the day, like in the 90s, you'd get 8, 12 remixes done, right? These days, just one. But if you've got multiple singles or multiple tracks, try and get one of each of the tracks on the album, because then you've automatically created a whole new album, which you can come out and do the remixes,
Yeah, I've thought about it, that idea, but it's a lot of times people don't even respect you if you've had numbers behind your name or that sort of thing.
Just build it over time. And you've got DJ promo for dance stuff globally, so every country there's DJ charts or there's, dance labels. Dance labels, signing to dance labels is one of the easiest things, because the A&R guys are all really active. Because a lot of the artists only ever have one single. So they're just jumping from one artist to the next, if you know what I mean. To have an artist come along that's got a full album and everything is actually somewhat unique.
And Starlee is a good example of that. Remember that Call On Me single? Mm-hmm. Was the remix that went off. She had no audience, just went amazing on playlists overseas and just shot through the roof. But it was the remix that went nuts.
And that was an example, we distributed that worldwide, but then all the majors included, territory by territory, it got signed and picked up. And that's when it really took off.
Because it had more attention in each area. But to your question about the PR, I would get a publicist to help me write a bio if I was standing where you are, because that will help sell your story when you're wanting to connect and get the remix and so forth. Small investment in you, because you know your story, and it's publicist is not going to be emotionally attached to what she's writing. She's going to be writing it in he or she will be writing it in from a third person perspective, and will probably sell it better than you can. Yes.
Check out the Music Managers Forum, and like there's heaps of resources and people here that you can get mentorship from. So start at the very beginning with what is even a career to start with, before you even go up. I'm ready to go up, but yeah, thank you.
Are you in a position to do remixes yourself?
No, I don't produce the songs myself. I'm just one of those.
Okay, because that's another great way of doing it, is just do reciprocals on remixes.
Just quickly, you only get one chance to release a debut album, so be patient and make sure that everything feels right. And if you do want to get a team, that you get the right team in place, because once it's out in the world, you can delete it, but it's you can
No such thing as delete,
issue
isn't there?
you can issue a takedown, but you want to make sure that this is your entry into the the industry, and you want to leave a mark. Make sure that you do all the little bits and pieces right, and don't just release it because your urge is, I want this out, it's ready. That little bit of patience is going to pay off in the end.
Well, I mixed it at the start of the year and just got mastered. Like I'm patient as ever. I got another album as well. And it's not. I'm just introducing myself to this type of music.
Yeah.
But just one more question as far as like PR budgets, or like what the price looks like for something, maybe for like a new artist or whatever the case. Like just numbers.
Maybe check out the.
Maybe Nicole Thomas could answer that one. Hello.
I would say what Tim suggested about checking out the MMF website, because it does have all the resources to everything from publicity to radio plugging to management, distribution, everything. Like all the basics are there. But in terms of publicity campaigns, it varies from publicist to publicist. They do single publicity, album publicity. So it's about meeting the people first and talking to them, and then they can talk to you.
Thank you very much. $1 million.
Okay, we've got time for one more question, I believe, and that brings it. The 50 minutes has just flown by. Does anyone else have anything to add? No. Well, I think we're done. But we just want to wish you all the very, very best in your careers. Nothing better than doing what you love on your own terms, even if you have to get some support along the way outside of this industry. How rich and wonderful is it that you're doing something that you love?
Oh, and can I just say one more thing as well? The most important thing is to have fun. So, have fun, everybody.
Well, please put your hands together for my panel.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
And for Maria. Woo.
You're going to fall off.
There you go. Thank you. Be memorable at least. Yeah. Hello, everybody. Are we good to go? Are there any more people coming in? Hello, everyone. My name's Carey Caldwell. I'm with the 212 Music Group. We have offices in Austin, Texas, Brighton in the UK, and in New Zealand. I've been the senior planning manager for South by Southwest for 19 years. And I've done 10 or 11 years with The Great Escape as the event support manager. So I know everyone on this session quite well. So I'm going to start by just getting everyone to come around and introduce themselves, what they do, who they work for, and then we'll take it from there with starting out with questions.
My name is Dev Sherlock. I'm a music programmer for the South by Southwest Music Festival, and my territories include Australia, New Zealand, and the UK.
My name is Alan Holt. I am the Outward Sound music guy for the Music Commission.
I'm Millie Milgate, and I'm the executive producer from Sounds Australia.
I'm Adam Ryan, and I'm head of music for the Great Escape Festival in the UK.
Right, so we'll start off with, like, everyone can just start telling us a little bit about the event that they work for, and in the case of Alan and Millie, what you guys do at South by Southwest. So I guess we'll go around the circle again.
Sure. South by Southwest is a global showcasing platform We also have, music festival runs concurrent with a film festival and tech conference and gaming and a whole lot of other things. So you've got quite a convergence of things happening at the same time as the music festival. But primarily what I'm concerned with is the sort of 1,500 to 2,000 bands that we have showcasing every year at the festival in Austin.
So we have a funding program where we help fund artists and managers to attend South by Southwest, and normally as part of a additional tour, which I'll get into later on. And we also usually, but not always, have a New Zealand showcase at South by Southwest for our bands to play at.
So for Sounds Australia, we were set up very much with the showcase conference model in mind. I think the Australia Council for the Arts had recognised that a lot of artists were applying for funding, but it was predominantly to go to market events like South by and the Great Escape. So it was 2009 that they established Sounds Australia, working with other industry partners. And the real role is to look at where the opportunities are and see how we can value add. So for an event like South by, we're not talking about Great Escape yet, but you want both?
We can talk about both.
Similar principle, they really get offered one official play. So the idea of an artist going from either Australia or New Zealand and making that kind of investment in an event, you really want to be seen more than once. So for something like both of these events, we look to provide second play opportunities. So we're producing additional showcases. Most of those are done under the Aussie Barbecue banner, but it's also about recognising the industry that are going as well. So trying to provide value-add networking. So we do a VIP industry luncheon at both of the events where we're really targeting key international industry to sit down with the Australian managers, other labels, independent publishers that might go. And we also do a lot of events between the different export music offices. We've done that for over a decade now under Country Connection. So it's really just acknowledging that you as artists or industry are investing so much in yourselves. What can we do to be another member of your team and offer on-the-ground support?
The Great Escape is a 3-day conference that happens in Brighton, which is about 2 hours on a train down on the seaside in the UK. Similar to South by, we have a conference and a showcase model. We don't have a film or gaming thing, so that's probably where the similarity ends. Whereas South by, I guess, is a gateway into the US market. The Great Escape is a gateway into the European market. So we have a lot of industry showcase parties and stuff like all the major agencies from around the world attend. It's about 500 artists in total, so it's a lot smaller than South by. But we still work with around about 27 countries in total, so it is definitely a global event.
Right, so one of the things about events like the Great Escape and South by Southwest is there's an artist application process, which is currently open. Yours just opened last week. Yours has been open for since August. So we're going to just go through some various bits and pieces on that. So this one's out to both Adam and Deb. If we can just talk us through a little bit about the application process and what is it that you're looking for with an artist and what's the acceptance process?
It's always good to apply online, but I definitely get in touch with your sort of local or your export office to flag that you're interested in getting funding and coming over to the UK. But I'm looking for artists that are sort of active in their local territory, that are, if there's a big touring artist coming to town that you're looking to be the support act on those shows. I'm looking for somebody that's got a release plan and a schedule, the beginnings of a team. So you don't have to have a booking agent, but at least somebody there that's supporting and help grow what you do. I'm assuming it's pretty much the same as what it's pretty. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, our criteria is similar to that. We're really looking at the band's career arc, and our sort of key point indicators, to use a buzzword for that, is what the team looks like. Do you have publishing? Do you have a label? Do you have a manager? Were you playing a 100-cap venue last year? You're playing 200-cap this year. Are your streaming numbers on the rise? Are your social numbers on the rise? Are your YouTube numbers on the rise? There are all sorts of things that we look at. You do not need to tick every one of these boxes. These are all just sort of things that we look at to paint the picture of where you are on your progression. And we want to see positive momentum. We want to see growth. We want to see you ready to break out of the territory you're already in and to come to South by Southwest and showcase for a global audience of festival bookers, music supervisors. Maybe you don't have a North American agent yet. You will be showcasing for North American agents. Maybe you have a label deal in your territory, but you want a North American label deal. And, all these sorts of things factor into whether we think you're ready to come to South by Southwest, because a really critical thing is it's very expensive to do, and I think Carey will probably get into this in a moment. So we really need to make sure it's worth everyone's time and your expense and the cost of doing it and doing it at the right time. Excuse me. So it's really about timing, isn't it, Adam? It's about everything sort of being ready to go to that next level. So that's what we're looking for. And those are some of the criteria in there that we all take into consideration.
So in that application process, it's the artist can reach out and apply themselves, right? It doesn't have to be through a booking agent but does that help if it comes from an agent?
Yeah, sometimes, because it means that there's a reason why the agent's taken it on. Like there's a team and all the key points that we've probably just mentioned, but it doesn't affect it really, no.
And then I know you just brought it up, but what kind of collateral do you generally need to see when applying? Is it photo, bio, track? And I know this because I've actually I've just gone through both of those application processes, and they're both slightly different, but kind of the same.
Our process is pretty comprehensive. If you're going to do it, you need to spend some time on it because we ask for a lot of stuff. But yeah, it's a pretty comprehensive process. And it's partly a good vetting thing too, because if you can't be bothered to take the time to fill out all of the stuff that we're asking for, even that can be an indicator to us that maybe you're not that serious. Maybe you don't care enough. Like everything sort of factors in one way or another.
I'd like to say ours is complicated, but I don't think it is. It's probably quite straightforward. Probably, yeah. I always think the least you write, the better, because it's ultimately. I don't know. I do the research on the acts, based on other things than the application. So, but I'll go through each territory and each country and work with people like Alan to make sure that we're selecting the right acts, so we've got the right information, key indicators, in place, because I don't know everything, believe it or not, especially when it comes to New Zealand music. So it's important to make sure that we're talking to people on the ground here, and because you can kind of lie on applications, can't you? I mean, everybody that's done a job interview's probably lied. So.
What kind of people do you hang out with?
Well, I mean, I can sort of to a degree vouch for that. Back in the day, I used to be one of the people that would assess a lot of the submissions that came through, and you start seeing stuff where artists that have done nothing would put through a 3 or 4 page bio that actually still said absolutely nothing. So, I think when you are going through the process, it is a case of being truthful and providing facts. I think that's one of the things that I've always thought is the information that's going to you guys is not a bio that's being put out for as a press release or something. It's facts, like the streams and always that, we're releasing an album next year. Well, if you're releasing an album next year, put the dates down, because I've heard that cliche so much. We've all heard those cliches.
Carey, what my favorite one is? We ask if there's any bands you've opened for, and people, inevitably there's a band that no one's ever heard of, and I've opened for Billie Eilish and Red Hot Chili Peppers, and it's because they played a tent at a festival, like the smallest tent at a 20-stage festival that Billie Eilish and Red Hot Chili Peppers were headlining.
Yeah, I remember reading this. But so what's the
Was that you?
No, that wasn't me. I was trying to think the funniest one I ever saw was something like when the band put the description, they were like we're a postmodernist, post-math, avant-garde rock pop emo band, and I was like, I think my notes then was like, I'm glad for you. How did that work out? But yeah, some of the descriptions are pretty crazy. When's the deadline?
Gosh, that's a great question. I think it's end of this month.
We've just opened, so it's a long way away.
And once
I don't know.
Once an artist...
I will add. There's a public deadline, and then there's the deadline. If you haven't applied yet and the deadline passes, you could talk to Millie or Alan, and and they'll put you in touch with me, and I'll send you a little voucher you can apply with. So it's.
And when and how do artists get notified? Because this is going to lead on to the funding section and visas. So how soon would, say, a New Zealand artist or an Australian artist that got accepted, when are they likely to find out? Is there a date, or is it just as it happens?
We've just sent out the first round of invites this week. Certainly for international artists, we try to get the invites out sooner than the domestic artists for that reason.
Okay, so we'll go on to this, and I know Alan talked about it earlier today. So my submission is in, the artist has been accepted, funding. What can I fund for specifically South by Southwest or the Great Escape? And also, what can't I go for? I'm putting that one out to both of you guys.
Okay. You can fund visas. We do 100% visas, which is different from our other costs, which are 50%. Flights, accommodation, per diems, hiring of gear, hiring of session musicians if need be, hire a promoter, van hiring, lots of different travel costs. You can't buy equipment, but you can rent it. That sort of stuff. In general, it's seldom that we will fund South by Southwest or the Great Escape in and of itself. You do need to have other things going on in that territory. Because, as I said before, South by and the Great Escape, you get one show, official show, and then you might get another show at either Australia Showcase or the New Zealand Showcase. And 2 showcases max is not a lot for all your money onto. So we do want to have as much else going on as possible. That can be meetings in London or New York or LA on the way in, or more touring dates or collaborative songwriting sessions somewhere. But we kind of need to have more going on, unless you are just on the verge of exploding and there's enough weight there to mean that's the place you need to be. But we just don't normally fund one showcase and then go home again.
We don't fund any. So Sounds Australia isn't a funding organisation. I think there needs to be a dedicated music development fund for export in our country. There's definitely accessible funding through the different state and territories, and there is the opportunity to go for some of the Commonwealth funding. Our website has links to all of it, but we don't personally fund any. Yeah.
So then this leads on, we've got the showcase, we're going for our funding. The one that I always recall hearing is the number of acts when they get to the visa process, that's when a lot of acts just decide it's either A, they're not going to do it, or B, it's too expensive, or whatever. I didn't realise about the 100% visa funding. But when should an artist, and this is keeping in with what I saw what Kath said today about the visa process taking a lot longer and being a lot more expensive, when should artists start that process? Is there any?
It is probably the single biggest barrier to exporting in the US, the visas at the moment. And I guess with South by, there is a little bit of because of the sheer size of South by and their capacity to advocate, they've managed to set up, and I don't know how official it is, but if you are going in to just showcase at South by Southwest, you can go in as an Australian or New Zealand under the visa waiver scheme. So you can go in on the ESTA, so you don't need a working visa. It means you can only play official shows at South by Southwest. You can't do any of the other unofficial parties. and it also means you can't stop in LA or New York on the way out either. So it's a bit of a catch-22. It gives you the flexibility to go in without the $11,000 visa cost, but it does mean you can't do anything else. So it's kind of that swings and roundabouts, like what's the opportunity cost, what's the value of going in without doing anything else. If you do have other opportunities and if you have a government that's willing to pay for your visas, you would absolutely want to look at it. I reckon you need to be starting your petitions at least like a minimum 6 months out, possibly longer. And you really need to be putting a case forward. And again, there's a bit of a dichotomy there in that if you're an artist that's just showcasing for the first time in the US, you might not have the history and you might not have the runs. And there's a little bit of an interesting scenario where we can all look at the metrics and look at streaming and look at socials. That's not necessarily the skill set of the people that are approving these visas. So there's this real kind of disconnect of what they used to be able to determine set you up as an extraordinary alien, which is the definition you need to get these working visas. So it is really, really hard. So I think it's all part of am I ready to go to South by, and how and why am I doing it? And is it a just quick in and out for the first trip, with the intention to use that as evidence to then apply more formally for a visa and go back in? It's just about, it's a much longer conversation, but it's something minimum 6 months. Any later and you're going to run into all kinds of trouble, I think.
100% agree with that.
Yeah.
So again, I always remember someone saying, if you go in on the ESTA, there's still a chance that you get the wrong customs person and they still deny you entry. And someone always said to me, if you're going to do that, fly into Houston, because they tend to know about South by.
We haven't seen problems with that in probably the last 5 or 6 years. No, I think they've really got it to a point where those border control people know come March, that's what you're going into that country for. It's astounding that you've done it, because it's really not the legislation and it's not the common rule, but they've managed to do it.
I think there's some other advice that goes along with that, which is really have your paperwork in order. We have a letter you can download that says I'm an artist showcasing at this event. We advise artists don't rock up to customs with your sunglasses on or booze on your breath or shit like that. Like, you've got to just have your act together when you're doing that.
Oh yeah, no, totally. I mean, I know that from just personal stuff. When you go for a visa,
turning up.
What does that mean?
Turning up with booze on your breath.
Just knowing what it's like. No, well, not so much the booze on my breath or the sunglasses. Just knowing what it's like being put under pressure by the customs.
Stop, Carey. Stop.
All right.
Next question.
Yeah, next question. Okay. So if I'm putting in an application, is it an application for the band or is it for every individual in the band?
For visas?
Yeah.
It depends. This is a fun topic. It's actually depends on the band. So if you're Marlon Williams, you put in 2, one for Marlon and one for his bands. But if you are the best, you do 1 for the whole band.
You don't even. It's
okay.
the worst.
Yeah. It's just the way it works. If you're a band, you just need 1 application. But if you are a solo artist with a backup band, you need 2.
Yeah, it's a feature
And then-
artist. And then you've got crew get attached.
Crew,
to,
yeah.
They're like the 2, like you got O1s and O2s. The crew go in.
So the crews are
Crews can go in
separate,
on the
or they're under
They can
the
be
art?
on the same application.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're getting petitioned together. Yeah.
And is it still is it Tamazan?
Tamazan's one of the companies that we recommend. Yeah.
There's you're welcome to look at our website as well. I think we've got 7 different US visa specialists that have worked with Australian artists. So I'm sure it'll be similar. And if you're looking, just drop them all a line and get an idea of price. I mean, the actual cost of the visas has increased, like the actual processing cost. You pretty much have to pay the expediting fee because it takes so long, so there's that cost. But the big one now is the complexities of it means you need a lawyer. You just cannot even attempt this by yourself. So that's where the bulk of the costs are coming in.
I'll just shout out Tamazdat because on their website they have a whole lot of FAQ and a whole lot of information that you can have for free. You don't need to be a client to access that information. They've got it all on their site, and it's really helpful just to get you started.
Yeah.
They've been doing it for quite a while, haven't they?
Yeah, and they're doing lots and lots of advocating and lobbying to try and have Congress look at the issues.
Okay, so we've successfully gotten our visa, and now we're into the performance. And so I guess just a few questions here. With the Great Escape and South by Southwest, are there payments?
Sorry, ask that again, please.
Are there payments? If there's an artist that's playing at South by or the Great Escape, do they get paid?
Well, if you're an international artist, you do not get paid by the festival to perform, and it's all part of keeping that ESTA waiver in place, because if you're coming to the country and you're making money, you need a work visa because you're making money in the country. So that's if you get the work visa and you come over and you get a paid show, say Budweiser or something asks you to play on their show and there's a budget and a fee, then you can get paid. You get a comp badge to attend the conference and the panels and mentor sessions and films and all that sort of business. And but we can't actually pay bands because that messes up a whole lot of our structure.
We pay, but the fees are nominal, not phenomenal, is what we say.
That's kind of interesting. I didn't actually know that TGE paid. So I'm
of course. Yeah, we do pay, but I mean, it's in keeping with playing a 200 capacity venue or a 500 capacity venue or whatever you're performing at. But if you are a bigger artist and you have more costs, and we really want you to perform, then we can look to try and get closer to your running costs. But to play the UK, you need a certificate of sponsorship, and we've recently just gone certificate free. We're not visa free, so if you need a visa to enter the country, you'll still need to apply for that. But to earn money for the performance, you can just present a letter. But again, that's only for the Great Escape. You'd have to sort out a certificate of sponsorship if you were going to tour, but you could probably get the promoter to sort that out for you.
I mean, just to point out, we do pay domestic artists. It's just we can't pay international because of the.
Yeah, we found that when we used to pay people for the second place stages at the hotels, and then we realised that we were causing all kinds of grief, because we were putting people in.
I imagine this is incredibly confusing, but I don't. We won't really need to worry about it.
What's usually provided in terms for showcasing artists? I mean, do I have to hire backline? Is backline provided? I'm thinking more of, and I'm not so 100% sure of the Great Escape, but I know that you have venue reps, you have stage managers. If you just talk us through the process where there's an artist coming over from, say, New Zealand, and what do they need to bring with them?
Well, bring your instruments, obviously, and I mean. It really depends. Because we have so many stages and so many levels of band, we have shows that are presented by presenters, and that could be like, DIY Magazine or, something, a media outlet or something like that will present a show, and they'll provide full backline and sort of trick out the venue a bit for you. And this really doesn't apply, if you're well enough known in New Zealand to come over and play South by Southwest, you're probably going to be playing a stage that's in pretty decent nick. If you are an unknown band from Dallas who got invited at the last minute as a kind of a favor or whatever, then you might need a backline. You might need to get together with the other bands and share backline or something like that. But there's a lot of sharing and splitting of costs and stuff that goes on. But that's bands down here versus bands here and here and here.
I should just add. If you're going over and you need to make clear to South by if you are a band or if you're a solo artist. We had one artist go 10 years ago, I think, who was a solo artist but with a band, but didn't tell South by that they were a band, and so they arrived and there was no backline for them, and they were really upset about it. But it was quite late in the day, and it was not ideal.
There's a pretty extensive advancing process. I mean, you enter all the gear you need and your inputs and who's playing what instrument and all of that. And in that case, it's probably a band that was a bit
I
apathetic.
won't go on.
Name names.
It was a while ago.
It was a while ago. Yeah.
So the next thing is then, again, I just want to go through some questions that were sort of given to me by various people about. So what are typical timeframes for playing other shows before? I guess I'm talking about exclusivity. Do you guys have that clause? Do you have that clause?
We don't have an exclusivity, no. The way I could be a real bugger and say stuff, and stop you from performing, but I think if you've travelled halfway around the globe, take any opportunities that you can get. But so we don't put stops in the way of people playing other shows or side shows. I try and keep across them, because obviously anything that's on the festival, I'd like to sort of be able to provide those opportunities ourselves without them going sort of onto a non-ticketed show. But I think it's best to try and support and help artists get as many shows and get as much exposure as possible, really.
We do have an exclusivity window, 7 p.m. to 2 a.m. Anything else is wide open. You could do whatever you want. There's no radius clause or anything like that. If you're playing Dallas and Houston or whatever on the way in, that's not a problem.
I suppose that leads into the next one. How do artists get secondary and additional plays? And there was one that I talked to you about earlier, particularly if you could explain the presenter sort of option. And I've always wondered, how does a band get on to a presented show? And if you could just explain what I mean by that.
Sure. So every band is guaranteed a showcase performance. If there's enough demand for the artist, then I'm going to have media outlets and presenters and people that are putting on showcases asking me for that band. If there's not much demand for the band, then we're sort of, as programmers, looking for a place to put them on a lineup that kind of just makes sense. If it's other singer-songwriters or other psych garage bands or something like that. Your best bet is to get on a presented show, because you're going to have the promotion muscle of that presenter. You're going to, again, have a bit more of a tricked out stage and better gear. You're probably going to be in a better room, all these sorts of things. In terms of getting on a presented show, I send all the bands to every presenter and say, let me know who you want. Sometimes everyone wants the same band. This year, everyone wanted Wet Leg and Yard Act, and not everyone could have Wet Leg and Yard Act. You have to sort of be democratic about it. But I would say that it's less about me advocating for you. I can advocate here and there, but it's really about yourself and your team and your manager. For example, looking at who presented shows last year, and then just start hitting them up. If you don't have a connection, maybe your publicist has a connection, maybe your friend has a connection, maybe Alan has a connection, or Millie, and just work every angle you can to get asked to play on a presented show. And you can play multiple shows if multiple presenters want you, and that's going to really make the trip and everything worth more while. Presenters also sometimes have a budget. Sometimes they have a sponsor. Maybe Budweiser is sponsoring the show, and they've got a few hundred or a few grand to pay the bands, and that's also always helpful. Does that help? Does that explain?
I'm always amazed at the lack of artists that do that, especially for us that contact DIY or look at the previous stage hosts from the year before and then tap them up. But if you're looking to grow in Europe, then you should probably be talking to those publications and media outlets in the first place. So, I would start building that rapport now.
We archive all the artists that have ever played these events. So one of the things we'll recommend to acts that are looking to go is go and have a look at who's gone before, and often you can pretty easily find out what shows they went to, or ask to take them or their manager out for a coffee and pick their brain and see if they'd make an introduction.
Can you just, both of you, just tell us a little bit about the New Zealand and Australian parties?
Yeah.
They're both really fun.
I guess we're there to try and get every act a second play. That started to get harder as more and more Australian acts got invited. So we started to do more and more of our own shows. So we do now 2 full showcases. But we also do some 2 for the showcase, where front of the week tends to be the crossover with tech and film and gaming and some of the bigger brands. So we'll put artists in between panels that might be happening at Australia House. But there's no process. Once the artists are invited, we have a list. I think it hovers around the 50 mark. 50 to 55 Australian acts tend to play South by. So it's really, we look to try and give everyone another play. But yeah, there's no official or formal kind of arrangement, but it is really short, sharp sets. It's not the same 45-minute set as your official play. You're looking anywhere between 20, 25 minutes.
Yeah, we're somewhat similar. I think last time in 2019, we had 10 acts play, which was a mammoth amount for us. And normally, when we've had a New Zealand party on, we would have 4 acts play, maybe 6 maximum. But this time we decided that we'll have all 10. We had a really good lineup, and it went really well. So yeah, it's like one more chance to play. It's during the day because we don't want to be interfering with the nighttime stuff, and we tend to do it early on. Well, so midweek because if it was too late, people start leaving South by, and you want to get people when they're still excited about hearing new music.
The other thing we've done is try and encourage Australian festivals and labels to take out presenter showcases in the evenings. So in the past, that's been Laneway, Splendour in the Grass have done a show, Future Classic have done shows. So it's about, we know that they're not going to program all Australian, and nor should they. But if we can encourage them to put at least 2 or 3 Australians on, that's another way that those acts get another Guernsey.
I always tell people, an artist thinks, I've been invited to South by, I've done it. The work has just started. Like, now you have to get your hustle on. Your manager, your bass player, whoever is your hustler needs to get hustling.
Speaking of which, the hustle should start before you go. And I always recommend that a manager or a member of the band should go to South by first, and the Great Escape. To experience it first, because you have no idea sitting at home or looking at pictures what it's going to be like, and you really need to know the lay of the land, and so you have an idea of who you need to meet, who you need to target, what other shows are going to be like, how far away are the venues. Like, you can look at a map and go, I can get from the Mohawk to here pretty easily. Yeah, we'll book a show half an hour between each one, and it's like, no, that's going to be insane. So yeah, you do need to see what it's going to be like before you spend tens of thousands of dollars to.
Yeah, I think we would like to print shirts that say "Go before you show." I think a lot of artist managers that have done that, gone the first time, used it to network, and then taken their band the following year. The difference is just you can't even put a value on it. Like, they've just understood it. They know exactly what they're there to try and do. Just segue on that for any managers. Are there managers in the room that are just working with acts? Just, okay. Because one of the things I think we see, managers go over to South by, and obviously they want to do the right thing by their act, and they're helping lug gear, and they're helping order Ubers and taking them to promo. That is probably the last place as a manager you should be with your band. You need to be at the events, at other networking events, trying to hustle and wrangle people to get down to the show at night. So I think there's, a little bit of expectation management. There are some artists that if they can't see the manager, they're probably not working. You just really got to understand that the roles are so different, which also makes it really hard for self-managed artists to do these events. And they need to be able to really try and carve the day up in terms of, today, if I am managing myself, this is where I'm going to take on the business side, and this is where I just have to be creative and put my best show on, because I think that's where you need all hands on deck to be doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I know some artists that will employ a tour manager just to do South by Southwest, to get people around the city, because you were talking before about, you look at an app and go, oh, it's only 3 minutes by vehicle from this venue to this venue, except during South by, when that 3 minutes is closer to 45 minutes. The traffic is unbelievable. It's and again to the point, if you're going to commit to go there, then the commitment could also extend to sending a manager or someone over, so that when you do go over there, you're making the most of the money you're spending, because it can seriously be a bit of a mindfuck going into South by Southwest, because it's
overwhelming.
Overwhelming is a great word, yeah.
So I was interject. In general, though, it's not both the Great Escape and South by Southwest. It is, if you are serious about those territories, it is in no way a waste of money for your manager to go there.
Absolutely not. I think, there's one other thing I was going to say when it comes to secondary plays at South by. If anyone does get accepted, get my email address. I have a list of hotels that participate in a second play stage, which these are stripped back shows, but artists have been signed out of them, and it's another good opportunity to play to a small crowd, but at hotels where all the delegates are staying. So it's just nothing. I'm always happy to pass those on. I'd say lastly, I'm going to miss a couple of questions now. Anyone got any success stories? And then we'll go to questions.
Aldous Harding, I think we invited over to the Great Escape when she was just releasing her first EP, I think.
First album.
Yeah, her first album. And she got representation off the back of that. And then I think we invited her back again, and then she got signed to a label. I think
she played 3 times.
Yeah. So, but each, that's a great, that was a great.
The third time was when she released her album. That was that day. That she played.
But you can see the progression there. So we don't just invite you once. If there is a continual growth, then we can obviously look to re-invite you again if you can get funding multiple times. But I think that would be a great success story, because we're in New Zealand. So I'll leave on that one.
I think that's a really good point. Is you're not one and done necessarily. Yes, wait until you're 100% ready, but you can also come back again the next year and the next year if the momentum is still there and things are still happening. Another thing I would want to touch on that I think we missed a little bit is another really critical thing, I think, for both Adam and I, is your promo plan for the Q1 and Q2 when our events are taking place. You need to have singles coming out, an album coming out, a tour, something. You need to have something going on. You need something that blogs are going to be posting, or a reason, radio is going to be playing your single or something like that. You just need to have stuff happening. Don't just come over in a year when you're like, oh, we're recording a record, it's going to be great, and it's going to be out next December. Like, that's not useful. You need to have momentum. You need to have stuff for people to latch onto, and stuff sort of bumping the band's profile up in people's minds.
Just thinking about the Aldous Harding story of The Great Escape was great, and at the same time, when she did South by, that for me was the first time I ever saw South by in action as far as really benefiting an artist. Because she had signed 4AD, she hadn't met the whole team yet, so her first show, which is at the Convention Center, all of Beggar's Banquet were there, 4AD people, Martin Mills, everybody, and they all met her. And then she blew them away, and then she just went every single day. She did 2 or 3 shows and just rocked it. And the thing about playing conferences and festivals is they're not like normal gigs. You are like, she played in this middle of this like open area where there's a hip hop band playing next door and a metal band next door to that, and it was just big booms and kick drums, and it was just her and one other person in her band, and she nailed it. And NPR said that she was their best artist of the day. So you have to be able to like perform in a windstorm and be successful, and she did. And so she went from the beginning of the week till the end of the week, and at the end played the 4AD party and just smashed it, and it was breathtaking to watch. And she got attention every single day. There was some achievement. So that was just like, what is good about South by and Big Sound as well. Sorry, The Great Escape, is that these things, the machinery is there for you if you're ready for it, if you're in the right space. Like, it could happen.
I guess the thing I would say is, there are literally hundreds of examples, or we wouldn't keep investing. We're really mindful that we have a finite budget and we're only going to go to things that work. And I think you tend to sometimes get outlier managers or artists going, we don't need the conferences, everyone's there, we want to avoid that. it could be said that that does work, but I think when you're looking at economies of scale and bang for your buck, you know that if you go to either of these events, there are a lot of people there. So the chances of being seen on that one time for that one investment is incredibly high. I think the success stories, and the couple I'll cite, are when an artist is well and truly ready, that every time they get on stage, they will play their best show. And honestly, showcases are the worst possible environment. People are going to talk all the way through it. They'll be on their phones. There'll be transient audiences. It's not your crowd, so you're not going to have that ebb and flow of taking people on a journey where they all know the lyrics. It is really hard. So you need to practice and practice and practice so that every single time, it doesn't matter if the sound guy's been up for 5 days, you can control your sound on stage. So there's a lot of... one of our team talks about rehearsing for catastrophe and getting yourself into your rehearsal studio, inviting a whole lot of mates, giving them a slab of beer and asking them to basically just start unplugging things, really making it really hard so that you've still got your wits about you and can keep on playing. And I think some of the examples, there's an artist called Gabrielle Cohen at South by, the generator guy decided that he would take the generator mid-show and assured me that someone else was bringing another one. And I said, that's awesome. Could you wait till the other one arrives if we're swapping these out? And he didn't. He took the generator, and poor Gabrielle was in the middle of this South by show that she'd come all this way for, suddenly looked around, someone handed her acoustic, she walked out into the audience and just played acoustic, didn't miss a beat, got people's attention in a way she never would have. Great escape. Julia Jacqueline, what is it with PAs being... Their PA got taken out. I think it was a technical issue. Same thing again. You could watch an artist fall apart, crack the shits, get angry with everyone else around them. She did the same thing, got an acoustic guitar, stood at the front of the stage. The band all just took a step back and watched her. You couldn't hear a pin drop, and every single European promoter in that building walked away wanting to work with her. So I think a lot of the success comes from you're prepared and you're ready, the opportunity's there, and you're ready. You're ready to capitalise on it.
Yeah, I think a lot of them don't have sound checks either, so
No,
that's something to remember.
it's
So
awful.
I would prepare your set. Like, don't play your normal set. Like, rearrange it so your first song enables you to get your sound levels right, because you probably don't know the sound engineer and they don't know your music. Maybe don't finish on your strong songs. Maybe put them in the middle. You know, really think about think about how you structure the set, but definitely be prepared for anything, because the conditions can be quite rough.
Yeah, and say who you are. Like, people have walked... everything, you've got to make it easy for these people to want to work with you. The other thing I would say too is if you're planning a South by or a Great Escape, you can't even budget just for that one trip. If you go and you get everything you want, you get the agent that you want, you get a producer that wants to work with you, an artist wants to bring you on a headline, a support tour, you need to know that you have a base that you can financially replenish and go again. And I think the way global industry is working, you can't wait another year. Like, you need to be back. If you are serious about working these territories, you need to return to market in a timely fashion. So beyond just budgeting trip 1, know that you've got trip 2 ready to go somewhat in a really good time frame. And I think that makes it harder, but it also means when you go that first time, you can turn around to any potential business partner and say, we can come back in 4 months. And I think that confidence really helps people want to work with you.
I mean, the thing about having success at the Great Escape or the South by Southwest never, ever, sadly, means someone pours a bucket of money into your bank account afterwards. You have to wait for that to happen, if it does.
It never does.
So we're about out of time. I think, has everyone got I think we could probably do a couple of questions.
Just what's Sydney with South by next year? How's the...
That was actually the one question that I passed over. But Dev, Millie?
Sure. So South by Sydney is going to be a separate operation that we sort of consult and supervise. That is actually going to make my job a little bit easier, because I know that an artist that's played South by Sydney is going to be already sort of vetted and maybe it's just going to give them a little bump in terms of my willingness to bring them over to Austin. The focus with South by Sydney is more sort of Asia Pacific. Whereas when you come to Austin, you're doing sort of North America and the globe. you don't need to have played South by Sydney to get invited to South by Southwest. You aren't necessarily guaranteed to be invited to South by Southwest if you play South by Sydney. But I think it's going to be a pretty copacetic relationship and definitely sort of a feeder event for us.
I think it's super exciting. I think the idea for Australian and New Zealand artists to have any opportunities that are export facing, that are closer to home, that cost a whole lot less to get to, and there's no visa involved, is all a good thing. It also just gets you practicing for that when you do go to these others, you're ready. Absolutely, the focus will be on APAC, and I think there's a really awesome opportunity that as both Australia and New Zealand, we're in a really strong position to lead and to set our markets up in a way that people haven't looked at this part of the world before. I think the idea of the pillars of South by with the other creative industries, be that big tech and gaming and film, hasn't ever converged in Australia in the way it will, and I think that'll open up opportunities. When you look at a city like Sydney, we were doing lockdown before anyone did lockdown because we had the lockouts for a good decade. So it's a city that needs revigorating. An event like this, I think, will, provide levers for both state and federal and local government to change infrastructure and opportunities to license venues that might not happen. So I think it's a huge opportunity, and I think for Australian and New Zealand artists, we really could be bracing it, and the industry. I think they're probably looking at around 60% maybe localised programming. And I do believe applications are opening in January. So I'm sure Alan and the Commission and IMZ will let you know when it's all happening. But yeah, just to only go that far and only pay the accommodation Sydney or B versus the ridiculous prices in Austin, Dev. Ridiculous.
Not your fault, Dev.
Yeah, you're not so bad at that. But yeah, I think it's great. I think it's a great opportunity.
I think we've got to wind it up. I guess someone made a very good point in one of the sessions this morning. If you see someone with a blue lanyard, we're here, to be approached. So if you've got any further questions after this, I guess just come find us. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. That song's called Don't Know, and then there's a bracket, What to Do With Me, close bracket.
There's not a single thing I wouldn't do to let you know that I have been through all this shit before. I could be a little kinder, little less sincere. I could be for you. Love hurts, but I can't move on without it. You're the one that I need. Love hurts, rather write a song about it. You're the one that I need. There's not a single thing I didn't do to let you know that I had been through all this shit before. I could have been a little less obsessed with just one thing. I could have been for you. Love hurts, but I can't move on without it. You're the one that I need. Love hurts, rather write a song about it. You're the one that
I think they'll control that in there.
Okay.
You might just have to use it for you.
Ready to go?
Microphone test 1, 2.
Hi.
Boop.
He's got us in back right there. Well, they're shoes actually, but they're they are shoes, but they're yeah. But you can make them. Can we try mics? I've got a
What happened?
non-functioning mic.
Oh. Is mine working? Yeah.
Actually, we might have to trade because this one has less slack.
Sorry, you guys.
That's all right.
Some spaghetti going.
All right. Good afternoon. So this afternoon we're going to be discussing a market overview onto the current state of touring in the United States. Possibly where are the new hotspots for touring and festivals, and what recent strategies you may have seen to create great opportunities for emerging artists. So before I ask any questions, maybe if you could just briefly introduce yourselves and just say where possibly what you currently do might fit into this discussion, and if you have a specific interest in specific genres as well, because I think some of the audience may be interested in different specific genre areas of touring.
Sure. Hi, I'm Amy Davidman. I'm one of the found partners and agent at TBA Agency. We were an independent agency that started in 2020 once COVID hit and the larger agencies started to
Just move that mic there, if that's okay.
Turn it off.
Yeah, I'll swap them.
Oh, swap.
Thank you so much.
Could nobody hear me? Does that work? Is that better? Yeah? Okay. Amy Davidman, TBA Agency, independent agency. We represent a little over 200 artists, and mostly in the Americas. And I am a booking agent, so I probably have a lot to say in this panel. And I wouldn't say that there's any genre-specific, at least for me, not genre-specific, but yeah.
Yeah. And Che, I mean, we've heard a great interview about you this morning, but if you could just condense that a little bit.
Che Pope, producer, founder, and CDO of Workshop Music.
Dev Sherlock, you might remember me from 5 minutes ago.
We're getting our money's worth out of him.
Senior Music Festival Programmer for South by Southwest.
Thank you. So to start off the discussion, since the pandemic, how would you describe the touring market in the US currently? What has changed since the pandemic, and are artists in general having to work touring differently than they may have done before?
Let the booking agent
Yeah, okay.
start.
So I'll just talk for an hour. Yeah, I would say that there's a bit of a roller coaster effect happening right now. Right out of the pandemic, there was a huge explosion of touring, so much so that it was probably a little bit of not really a realistic view on ticket sales, or it just wasn't really reflecting what the market was going to keep doing. There's just was this complete frenzy of buying tickets and going to see shows and having a lot of artists just explode out onto the scene. So much so that last year, as everybody was planning this year, everybody really planned it as if the explosion was just going to, this roaring 20s thing that people kept saying was going to happen and continue. And so this year, every artist on the face of the earth is touring. There's, it's totally saturated. Ticket prices are higher. Expenses are higher. Fans don't have as much money to spend on ticket prices. It's a difficult situation right now, but also completely exciting, I have to say, because everybody's out on the road, and you're seeing so many artists who've been cooped up for 2 years who are finally getting out there, and so many new emerging artists. The discovery is really pretty exciting right now. At the same time, you definitely have festivals folding and canceling. So right now, I feel like we're in a bit of a transition place. It's super hard to guess what's going to happen next year. Of course, that's what we're all talking about. And just trying to see it level out a little bit and see what happens. Everybody's been talking about going back to normal before COVID, but I don't think that exists. It'll just have to be a new landscape. And that'll just be evolving, really.
What do you think, Jay?
I mean, I think she's, spot on, but because I see all these new festivals popping up and all these things going on, and I think everyone wants to get outside, and that's exciting. I've actually been to more shows this year than I've probably been in recent years. I mean, even before the pandemic. And that's exciting to see all the artists and see everyone excited, but also knowing that there's every time I turn around, it's oh, what's this? A new event. So I think it is becoming a saturated place where, you are having festivals fold and some not being able to maintain, what was the excitement of last year. So it is a good time to sort of weed out, the really good experiences and the people that are putting on, really good shows and festivals and concerts and events, because I think those are the ones that are going to stand the test of times. So. Fun stuff, though.
I think Amy nailed it with the word saturation. That's sort of my sense at the moment. You had all the tours that kept getting postponed and rescheduled. So you had a lot of fan dollar that was tied up and hanging on to those tickets. There were crazy numbers about something. Was it, Amy? Something like 80% of fans let the promoter or whoever hold on to that ticket, and only 20% of fans, I think, actually got their money back. They said, I'll wait till the band comes through. I'll wait for that show. So you had all that fan dollar that was already spent, and those tickets are being cashed in. And then you had the other spend, that's the average spend that's going to happen anyway. I'm in Austin, Texas, which is an interesting market because you really have everything at every level. You have small club, medium club, theater, stadium. I mean, you have everything, and you have Austin City Limits TV show that tapes there, and bands come through and do that. I mean, there's so many bands playing Austin right now on every level, and it's you've got all the young bands that have new music out. You have all the bands that put out a record 2 years ago and never got to tour it. You have all the old acts that are oh shit, I've got 5 ex-wives and alimony to pay. I've got to get back out on the road. And I'll give you one example, and I don't want to diss Roxy Music because I fucking love Roxy Music, but they went on sale at a crazy price. You don't handle Roxy Music, do you? Okay, good. And my coworker and I we're both like, shit, that's way too expensive. And we keep looking. And that venue that they're playing is maybe 20% sold. And that's been on sale for like 4 months now. Wow. And this is like the original lineup of Roxy Music, probably their last time around. And there are so many bands like that are coming through that are these sort of heritage legacy acts. And they can't sell tickets. So, if a reunited Roxy Music that hasn't toured in 15 years can't sell tickets, like, yikes.
We're actually seeing similar things happen here in the market too, and it's I guess it all comes down to saturation as well, doesn't it, with everybody touring at the same time. So asking these questions in mind with perhaps a little bit of a look towards the future, going, let's hope that landscape is going, is it ever going to be exactly what it was? Probably not. So if an artist's got something in their toolbox, maybe we can give something to them to take away today to sort of work towards, to maybe getting themselves out on the road and perhaps into the North American market. What key elements would a US booking agent be looking for from an international act? I'll start at this end so that you're not always
Gosh, I mean, I think you're looking for a fan base and a guaranteed amount of ticket sales. I think everyone needs to manage expectations. I don't know if are you booking a little bit smaller than you normally would for some of your acts at the moment?
I wish. It depends on their expectation and willingness to be realistic. I would love to.
There's also just the question
honestly,
of
that would be my advice. Leave tickets. Leave the anticipation out there. Sell out venues. Play smaller. That means you're making less money. That means you have to have money from somewhere else. My advice for artists coming to the States internationally really hasn't changed since before the pandemic, which is that your best bet is to develop your home market and take the money that you're making from being successful in your home market and reinvest it back into yourself. So, and I see this happen all the time with artists who might get big in Mexico, might get big in Canada. They get to a certain point where they can't really look at opening up a new market because they feel like they're bigger than where they might be in that other market. And so they just stay touring in their own country. And there are some artists that are do fine that way. They're successful, they make money, they're fine, they don't leave. But I think that trying to figure out a way to be realistic about going global and honestly, just being mindful of your expectations so that you can still explore new markets, even if you're selling, amazingly at home. But that home market is really going to be the investment that takes you out of your home country.
I've been spending a lot of time with someone she used to work with very closely, Tom Windish, and he's helping me actually build out the touring strategy for my company. And so we've gotten into this actual specific conversation in terms of like work, because it came down to it in terms of workshop signing internationally and him giving me a strategy and things of that nature. So it was the exact same thing. It was like, are you willing to, invest and promote, and obviously they're going to have to build in their home market, but are you willing to invest in the promotional and the tour support to bring them over to really help pierce the market? And it's going to take things of that nature. And also, he also said thinking outside the box, be creative, in terms of working with your brands and sponsors and so forth. And it's like, a lot of bands and artists don't like doing that, especially so early where they have less to offer, a brand and they're not getting paid as much, but, it's trading that, playing at some corny corporate event to, get some tour support dollars and things of that nature. So he was really emphasizing, you're going to have to think outside the box. And he emphasized that it's not easy. It really is about, reinvesting in so meaning if the band is making money in this market, taking that money and reinvesting it to open up a new market, break that market, do the same thing in that market, and manage expectations.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. So just slightly on the same theme, how would an international act approach you? What would you like to see from them if an international act was coming to you saying, this is who I am, would you be interested in me? What would you be looking for from them, and what would take your interest in order to look further with that artist?
I have to generally see a lot of potential in the music first.
Mm-hmm.
Whether or not it's like my cup of tea isn't really the question. It's more about like where I can envision it connecting with fans and growing. So that's the first thing. I am a really and I don't know, my answer might be different than other people's answers.
But that's great.
Yeah, okay. So I'm a really team-oriented person in the way that I like to book and work on artists. So I don't really want to be siloed off from the label and the publicist and the lawyer and everybody else. I really love to be working all together. So to be honest, having a team, maybe more than one person, is really awesome for me. And also hearing about an artist or hearing about music from multiple people just really helps me with like context of how things are catching on with that artist. So, anybody who was in the previous panel that I was doing, like data is, I'm just kind of lazy with it. So sure, I'll go and look at what those numbers are. And I do think that it, signals attention to the music and, what's going on with the fan base. But, it is a business at the end of the day. So like having those building blocks all put together is super helpful for knowing that I'll be set up best to do my job in my territory.
What about you with your agency?
I mean, I still look at whether it's international or domestic, I still kind of look for the same things.
Mm-hmm.
And the number one thing is that, first of all, if it's something that we connect and my team connects with the artist or the the band or the music, is that we can be impactful. If we can't be impactful for it, we're not all things to everyone. We're not in all genres yet. We're building towards that, but we're not there yet. So it's really about how effective we can be as working together. So that's what I mean. Obviously, the talent and the team loving it, and us, and them loving us.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully it's harmonious, and then can we really affect? That's what we're really looking for.
This is something we actually mentioned in the last panel as well, but a thing that I specifically look at is a band's progress in terms of the venues they're playing. Were they playing 100 cap a couple years ago, 200 cap? Can the band scale? Can the band grow an audience? The other thing that's I think is really critical is just determination and diligence. I mean, touring America is absolutely backbreaking. It has destroyed bands. Bands have come home from America and broken up because it's just grueling. It's massive. You have to go back over and over and over. So I think you really need to be willing to sleep on the floor of the van with a bunch of guys that haven't changed their socks in a week and that sort of thing. I mean, it's hard work. So, I want to see a band that is willing to work really hard. The other thing I like to see bands do, and this happens a lot at South by Southwest, is network with bands from other countries. If you're a band from New Zealand and you meet a band from the UK or from America, like, hey, we're going to come over and tour New Zealand. Can we open for you in New Zealand if you let us open for you in America or whatever? Like, basically do that exchange student thing with bands and make friends with a band that already has a bit of a circuit in their region. Maybe they have a good circuit in the Midwest that they, can play and have a bit of a fan base. That's a good way to just sort of ride on someone's coattails and then return the favor and have them come over to your territory.
Thank you. So still on that theme, when an artist is looking to put together a team, it's a bit of a vicious circle, but when they're looking at a new territory, is there anything that comes first? Booker, publicist, record label, radio plugger? Is there any one thing that you could say would be the first thing to go for, or should it be all at once? Should they be looking for any of those things or none of those things? How would you see that works as a package for an artist trying to get into a new territory?
I really like having a manager in place because I think that being able to talk about things realistically is super hard emotionally on artists, because you do need to boil things down to business discussions. And I just prefer there's a buffer, and I think it's better for artists. I think that it shields them from some of the tough conversations, and it also allows for there to be a discussion about strategy that's not emotionally based. So even if it's somebody who's a temporary manager or someone who you think maybe they're even just kind of like a day-to-day assistant in a way, but they understand you as an artist and they can truly represent you and like have those conversations and then like translate them to you in a nice way. But I think that's, for me, I don't always really care that manager has a ton of experience, as long as they are kind of organized and just understand what that position means in the scheme of things. Like, I don't think that they need to be the most experienced person in the world. They could be your friend from college. They could be, somebody who you met at a conference like this that isn't, you're not signing on with them for 10 years or something. It doesn't have to be that serious. But maybe you're both mutually getting something out of that starting place where, they can practice being a manager and you can practice, and then just having that for me is really important in terms of strategy and planning.
Thank you.
And then I would also say it really depends on the individual artist in terms of the needs, right? So, for instance, if to move tickets, because obviously the goal is whatever region you're going into is to get ticket sales. So, what's your strategy behind that? So, if you're a band that has has radio players and things like that, like so, if you're coming into LA, but you're active on NPR, you really want to push that angle. You really want to get in, maybe an in-studio appearance at NPR and so forth. So, you want to double down on that. And vice versa. So it depends on, to me, what your angle as an artist, and that determines where you really apply the pressure, whether it's a publicist or a local promotion and so on and so forth.
So would you want somebody coming to you who's already got that in place, or would you consider working with them if you were going to say to them, well, maybe you could talk to this person and that person, here's a publicist you might like to talk to? Well, would you rather just see them come to you with it all already sewn up?
I mean, already sewn up is great.
Yeah.
I mean, that's already great. But I would work with someone who just, very similar to her answer. I would just need someone with organization. So someone in the organization with the artist has some level, and I have met artists that are, fiercely organized and fiercely about their business that I would work. I have an artist on an artist that we're signing who is like that. But she's a unicorn. It's not usually like that. So I would usually insist on somebody in place to help manage the situation. And I think it's just very important for organization, because for us to communicate and for us to execute together, we have to be able to do that. And artists notoriously are not organized.
Yeah.
I mean, if I hear music that comes to me and there's nobody in place, I mean, I'm not going to say, let's work together, but I'll start sending it around to people. Like, have you heard this? Have you heard this? It's more like, okay, can I somehow wrangle a bunch of people to be into this, with me?
So I guess the question's sort of coming from this far away. New Zealand artists perhaps may not often probably have a manager, but they might not have a connection into, say, radio plugging. So if they came to you and said, look, I'm looking for bookings in North America, can you help get bookings? And you might say, have you worked on radio? are you able to recommend people for New Zealand artists that they may be able to work with in that regards? Do you have networks that you can connect them with?
I mean, I'll throw it to Dev. I feel like it's, for me as a booking agent, that's too early to be working with me. But you should be going to South by.
I'm going to rep for publicists. I think publicity is the most affordable and way and a good starting point. I think radio pluggers are very expensive, and radio in the U.S. is a very different beast. You're not getting on commercial radio in the U.S. unless you're on Universal or whatever. You might get some NPR play. KEXP might recognize you. KCRW might spot you, but that's not going to give you the tour, help promoting your tour that you need. A publicist, meanwhile, can send your tour dates to every blog and every media outlet in the country, and some of them will publish them. And someone will read that and say, oh, shit, they're coming to Louisville. They're coming to my town. Publicists can arrange giveaways for tickets and things like that that'll get you promotion. And they also, just getting you on media outlets, raise awareness for people like me and Jay and Amy. This is where we're going to start noticing. You'll be like, oh, gosh, they wrote about that. They wrote about that band. I think publicity is a really good starting point for an artist outside the country.
Okay, great. So on another topic, working visas in the US. For New Zealand artists, it can be quite a process to obtain a working visa, or a lengthy process to obtain a working visa. At what point in the process are you happy to start having conversations with international artists? Do they need to have already got their work visas before you start talking to them, or are you happy to carry on the conversation, make some bookings, knowing that they will be able to get their visas eventually?
Yeah, I don't think they have to have the visas already, but they need to understand how much it costs and what might need to go into it, the amount of time. In preparation for this question, I did send a note to the immigration lawyer that we use, who I love, and I was like, what's going on for New Zealanders? And she said that actually the biggest thing right now is just that Auckland doesn't have enough appointments available. So there's a lot of artists who need to get visas, and they actually need to go to another country to get those visas.
Wow.
To get the appointments. And I just had that situation happen with an Indian artist who I work with, who's been living in the States for 10 years, went to school there, but needed to apply for a different visa to start performing. And yeah, she had to go to Peru for her appointment. And that was just the reality. We had a certain amount of time. She has a show coming up, her first show, that it has to happen. So what are you going to do if there are not enough appointments available? So she said that was the biggest thing that was going on right now for New Zealanders. But yeah, the cost is a lot. Also, what's happening, I think there's a little bit of a difference between if you're applying in Q4 than if you're applying in Q1 or Q2. And that sometimes what can happen is that they'll come back for more information. So you almost have to plan for the fact that you may have a delay in the middle because you might need to gather more materials. So that can pop up as well. So yeah, just giving yourself a good amount of time.
Thank you. That's great information. Do either of you have any experience in that area? No. Yeah.
Not really. If I had a band, I would want my booking agency to have the knowledge that Amy has.
Yeah, I mean, we've always used immigration attorneys, so we've always just been hands off of it. But we've had to bring them over for different reasons, more for recording than performance.
Yeah. No, that's great. Thank you. So just bringing it back to a slightly more general conversation about what's happening in the US, can we just talk about some of the great festivals that are still happening, and perhaps festivals that might feature specific genres or multi-genre festivals? Like, what's happening? What would be good things to aim for? Perhaps smaller festivals that emerging artists could contact themselves and perhaps aim for, and then perhaps working towards bigger ones?
There's so many festivals.
Yeah, that's why it would be really good just to hear about your experience of some that you work with and getting artists booked on.
There's A-list festivals, national festivals. Those would be the Coachellas, Governor's Ball, Bonnaroo. Those are the kind of top tier festivals. And then there's probably more genre-specific festivals that are under that, maybe like Electric Forest or I'm blanking, or like Riot Fest, for example. And then there's like regional festivals that are mostly it's about kind of who they're pulling from fan-wise. So regional festivals are counting on the people who are within driving distance of them going there. That's like Treefort in Idaho or Pickathon in Oregon. I do think that there are events and festivals that are actually really interested in international artists and exploring that. And sometimes it's a little bit thematic. I'm trying to think of some examples. They'll come to like Big Ears, I would say. Big Ears is highly curated, not great big fees, but a lot of people really look to them as just like a discovery place, but also where artists are doing maybe it's a little bit thematic in a way, and they're not afraid to look to the ends of the earth for the artists that fit whatever their theme is or whatever they're specifically trying to curate. There are other, I wouldn't call them festivals, but like summer series, like Central Park Summer Stage or Stern Grove in San Francisco or Grand Performances in LA. All of those are really interested in being discovery platforms in a way. I know that Summer Stage forever has loved being the buyer that brings an artist to the States for the first time. So they tend to have a little bit more money because some of them, not all of them, are like run under city government. So they might have government money that doesn't need to be tied to how many tickets you're actually worth because you haven't been there before. So there are events like that I think are worth paying attention to and trying to get, to meet those buyers or hit those buyers up that are a little bit more genre specific maybe, or just you can tell that they're interested in the international market. And I would say if you really don't know who those folks are, there's no reason you should. You just need to look to the artists who you can identify, like you can compare yourself to. So other New Zealand acts, maybe who are in the same genre, where did they play when they first came over? So I think you have to do a little bit of research to really figure that out. But anyway, that's what I would suggest.
And do you think those kind of festivals are open to artists contacting them and applying directly rather than through a booking agent?
I think all of us get hit up all the time by cold calls, cold emails. It's part of the job. So yeah, I think it's expected. A lot of those buyers do attend a lot of international conferences, and that's really part of their job in a way, is to go to Reeperbahn and Womex and there's so many different festivals that are discovery festivals where there's going to be showcases by local artists. And I think agents don't necessarily go as regularly as often, but I think promoters and buyers actually do go kind of annually to the same places.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really have much more to add because she really has the expert on this stuff. But I will say this in general, that's what it's about. You really have to do your research because there are a lot of opportunities. Don't think because you're an international artist that you can't access it. You really can. And that's one of the things, like for instance, our headquarters is in Detroit. So I've been really studying the region and all these, and who knew that there were all these opportunities that exist, whether it's, college related or, local series like she's talking about. There's so many opportunities. So even my strategy with my company is really just to take over our region, and know every nook and cranny within it, from a small, 150 people spot all the way, to 1,500, and know every thing in the region. So I think it's just really about really doing your homework, and don't be shy. Yes, like you said, pitch, code. I get DMs from from Russia. So, you know what I mean? So,
You'll be getting them from New Zealand now.
yeah.
Do you have anything to add, Deb?
No, I think they've nailed it. I think the niche aspect is probably a good entree. If you've got a garage psych band, you want to look at like Levitation or something like that. If you're
That was what I was trying to think of. That Levitation festival.
there, you go. I was feeling the. If in Detroit, there's a great techno festival. If movement, if that's your thing. So I think those are good entrees, but it's difficult to just go and play a small folk or techno festival and not be able to do a lot of other stuff. So that's the challenge.
That's the challenge. Do we have time for questions? Are we? Yes? Has anybody got any questions? No? Yes?
Have you found there's much interest happening in the virtual performance space as of the last post-COVID?
No. I think everybody's. I'm trying to think like generally. What do people think? What do I think specifically? I just think it's super rough. People are exhausted by the virtual space. I do think that one thing that popped up that we did during the pandemic was we did a couple of virtual showcases where we invited a bunch of people onto Zoom, and somebody with really great tech experience figured out how to. The artist was basically in a studio, and they did like a little showcase in a way, and that was really, I thought, pretty cool. And I would be open to that if it was really specifically for me, my agency, or maybe it was like a handful of different, people across the industry. I would be open to doing like seeing a live showcase really in that moment. So there's that. I think that's become just more acceptable in a way. Another thing that we did as, there was this lull with everybody in the live space where there was a lot to do, but also kind of nothing to do at the same time. And so we ended up having these big Zooms with every regional Live Nation buyer, or we just did so many more purposeful networking Zoom conversations that just never would have happened before. People who we'd known on email or phone for years, and just never had a moment with them, just seeing their face and really talking about things. And so what we ended up doing was we would just create those get-togethers, and then we would show a video of an artist that we had just recently signed or that we were excited about. And for me, I was able to show a video of an artist that most folks didn't really know about. And then I said, I want to set up her first tour. And really, every Live Nation buyer in that Zoom space was like, great, just email me. I'm down to try to start this business with her. And I don't know, that just wasn't really happening before. It was, so now I think that there's a little bit more of an opening where people are okay with that virtual space, but I wouldn't really advise anybody to put a lot of effort into developing the virtual space, if that makes sense. I don't see it translating right now.
And I mean, same thing for us. We've been using it more as a B2B tool, not something public facing, more as just a way to present our artists to various, whether it's the powers that be at various organizations and institutions. It's just a way for us to do it, virtually, where their teams may be spread across the country. But we have not done anything. We're not doing anything virtual public facing. So it's definitely just been B2B.
I agree. I think the world is a bit burnt on Zoom concerts at the moment. But, if you're a band and you get together and rehearse every week and you have the means to live stream from your rehearsal space or something like that, why the heck not? You can do that. But I think another useful thing is just having, if you can record a performance and put it up on YouTube just so it's there, someone can see what the band is like live, see if they have stagecraft, see if they have live playing chops. That helps me. I imagine it would help someone like Amy and Jay as well with their A&Ring. That's useful, but I really think the world is burnt on Zoom stuff. Web3, that universe is, if that's your thing, I think I'm a little too old for Web3. I'm still getting my head around it, but that might be something worth exploring for the right genre and the right artist.
Thank you. Yes.
As a young person wanting to sort of break into the industry in A&R and artist management, what is your kind of opinion on going straight to the US to do internships? Or do you think you should kind of take the steps in New Zealand to kind of work your way up to that? First, if you have an opportunity to go over there and do it, do you think just go ahead, or do you think kind of build up in your own country first? Especially speaking from my experience with unpaid work in the US for internships, like what do you think about that?
I think if you have a little bit of experience here at home and some knowledge, then that gives you some leverage and something to actually bring with you over to the States, rather than just being, this person's from New Zealand. You know a bit about the market, you have some experience there, and that's going to be attractive to someone. And I think companies in the U.S. have also gotten a lot better about paying interns. I think our intern rate is something like $19 an hour now or something. It'd be useful to bring something with you, I think.
Experience is always good.
Yeah, just go where the opportunity is. I just feel like if you're excited about what you want to be doing and you see an opportunity in the States to do that internship, like go for it. I think most people in the States pay their interns. I know that if it's a proper internship through a university, it's illegal not to pay them. So in general, I think at this point, maybe not 20 years ago, but at this point, it would really be frowned upon to be hiring an intern and not paying them.
Well, if it's a university, it works two ways. I know this because I've just done it. It's either credit or pay.
Oh, right, credit or pay.
Yeah, it's a credit or pay.
Yeah. But still, credit or pay, yeah.
Are there any other questions?
Are you guys looking for any interns?
Always.
Next summer.
Yes.
How can they apply?
Email the website. Email the email address on the website. Yeah.
Same here. Just
we usually
info at workshop.club.
quarterly or yeah.
Yeah, look under careers on southbysouthwest.com, and there are internship postings as we speak.
That's actually a question I've just thought of. When you have artists approaching you from another country, how would you like to see them presented to you? Would you like to require it by, because you've mentioned getting DMs from people, so do you react to the DMs, or would you prefer them to email you a whole EPK package, or what's your preferred way of hearing from artists?
The preferred way is the company website, which is or info at workshop.club. That's the preferred way, because that way it's definitely going to get seen. If you DM me, it may get seen, it may not, but that way it's definitely going to get seen. And obviously, the better the presentation, the better, the more serious it gets, looked at.
What makes a good presentation?
Something very clear and concise. You know what I mean? Someone, very straightforward bio. So we know about you. Where, what it is, and then the music. And reasonably good quality music. I've gotten all sorts of levels of,
Yeah.
I've gotten voice memos.
Yeah, I feel like just being super direct, here's my album, I would pick these 3 tracks to listen to. Here's my YouTube page, I would focus on this one. I don't have a lot of time, so it's kind of like the thing where you're sending a resume to get the interview, right? The interview is where you can flourish and tell your whole story and blah, blah, blah. But so I just want, watch this clip, listen to this, boom, boom, boom. So an EPK is kind of nice, if you are able to put something together that looks nice, or pay somebody to put together something that looks nice, and pull out some quotes from media from home or wherever. Again, it's just everybody's doing a once-over, so you've got to grab their attention in that moment. So don't put 50 links in there, try to
try to make it as easy as possible for them to actually like experience it. One-liners, just elevator pitch.
Yeah, it's like the DJ thing, right? You got to catch them in that first, It's like a DJ.
What's the saying? Brevity is the art. And please give me one quick thing to look at, or two things. And I love writing. I'm a former music journalist, and I would love someone that wants to write 1,000 words, but I'm never going to read it, and neither are either of them.
Cool.
That is so true.
It's good information, thank you. Does anybody have anything else to ask about touring in the US? Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's been very interesting. I've learnt some things, so hopefully everybody else has. So thank you very much for your time. Yeah.
Thank you.
Caught me unawares. Thanks for coming to day one of Going Global, the 10th edition of Going Global, and it's so nice to be back in person. It's been a long just about 3 years. Tonight, the excellent company Disco, who you'll learn heaps more about tomorrow if you weren't in the composer panel earlier, they're going to show you some drinks. Yay for Disco. So, Bozo is the venue. Now, Bozo is a lovely little bar. It's the back of the food workshop in K Road. So there's like art show Japanese at the front. You just keep going to the back. It's called Bozo, 309 K Road. And there will be drinks there from about 30 minutes time. And cheers, Disco. Nice for you to do that. There's a bunch of different gigs on around K Road tonight. Obviously, there's no Others Way this year, but there's lots of other great places that you can go and see some live music, catch up with each other, and hopefully our guests will get to see some bands tonight as well. So thank you very much again for coming, and I look forward to seeing you all in the morning, bright and early, with Joel Little at 10 a.m. So, ngā mihi nui.